Miss Warren, are we ready?
Madam Mayor, we are.
Thank you. Okay, let me get myself ready. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the Board of Supervisors to order. Miss Warren, may I have a roll call, please?
Supervisor Giomi.
Here.
Supervisor White.
Here.
Supervisor Jones. Supervisor Schutte.
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We're now on to item 3, which is our invocation, and we have someone new with us from the Living Stones Church. Welcome. Please give us the invocation for today.
Lord God, we begin this meeting going before you, the creator of the heavens and the earth. The entire world is under your control, and as your creation, we submit ourselves this morning to your care. You are not a God of confusion, but a God of peace and of sound mind and of order. You have said in your word that you have appointed these men and women to steward, to govern, and to lead our city. The work that they do today is to work in their calling as servants of God and on behalf of Carson City. And we pray now that in all decisions that are made, that your hand would be over it and that Carson City would flourish. That you would banish the effects of fall, which is confusion and disorder, and that you would give clarity in thought, word, and action to the board and all those engaged in the work of civic government today. We humbly but boldly bring this before you, trusting you to be over these proceedings. And I pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you so very much. That was just delightful. We're now on to agenda item number 4, and I didn't ask you in advance, but Sherry, would you lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. We're now on to agenda item number 5, which is our open public comment. I have Leah Case that indicates she'd like to speak on the opening. I saw her. She has her little one with her.
She was out in the lobby.
Yeah. She's coming. Good morning.
Good morning. That was nice. It was like service. Good morning, Madam Mayor and lovely neighbors on the Board of Supervisors. My name is Leah Case. I'm a resident of Ward 2. This is Charlotte Case, also a resident of Ward 2. I am the chair of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission, but not representing the commission. I am here as a constituent for 2 things. First, to ask for your support of the park's capital improvement projects and departmental staffing budget requests under item 14 that were recommended for approval by the Parks and Rec Commission. Our parks provide so much benefit to our community on a shoestring budget. I'm sure you know. Park staff is amazing at stretching every penny to make an impact. Of the items for your consideration, the staffing requests are the most critical for the department. And having a safe and open space for families, friends, neighbors, and even dogs is vital to the mental well-being of our Carson City family. Thank you. Second, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of the amazing work of Ranger Tyler Curver. There was a presentation at the April 5th Parks and Recreation Commission meeting on park ranger programs, and I highly recommend you give it a listen if you have a chance. During the pandemic, Ranger Tyler took it upon himself to create a digital duty belt. He created videos, graphics, social media content, all of this to connect with the community on his own time, right? He really went above and beyond for our city and our parks, and I just wanted to publicly thank him and commend his creativity and let you all know you can meet Ranger Tyler on May 21st at Mills Park from 10 to 2 for Kids to Park Day. So thank you all for your support and the work you do for our community.
Thank you, Ms. Case. We really appreciate your comment. Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up in the open public comment, so Denny? Go ahead.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. Thank you very much, Mayor and Supervisors. That's part of my 3 minutes. I want to bring up several things that I feel help me get more understanding about what's going on. One is an article, Preserving Traces of the Great Basin Indians. That's in the appeal, the 20th, page A6, or A10. And I think the author, Dennis Casnelli, really helped me understand the real need to be thoughtful. What you pick up in a certain area might be considered part of their lineage and their heritage, and consider getting it to Stewart School, which is going to be extending their exhibit at the school museum. And so if you have anything that you're questioning or thinking about that you can take it there and maybe get a second thought on it, and whether you should keep it or maybe donate it to the museum. So I wanted to bring that up. And the next thing is that the first traffic light went up in Carson City on Robinson and Carson Street on the 11th of October, 1957. And that came up yesterday for me when I went under a stoplight and heard it swinging. And then I saw nuts and bolts on the ground next to it, and I'm going, heck, I got to get out from under this thing. I brought in the pieces that I found and a description of the issue. And so that's also I want to bring up, as it's coming up in dialogue in the community, range under fire, stewards of the rangeland. And just want to suggest that PBS had a wonderful special. I thought it was well considered and fairly involved with a lot of different angles. Your horses, the cattle, the sheep, the goats, etc., and the people and the sage, grouse. Anyhow, I want to suggest that. Also, I have a concern, which is dust coming from the roundhouse area, and there's a staging area that a construction company has, and when they move their vehicles, kicks up quite a bit of dust, and in this wind, it's really going all the way over to Jack in the Box, all the way across Stewart to this parking lot area at the Bridge Church that day, and I couldn't get my camera out fast enough, or you would understand my concerns. So I brought that up and want to thank everybody for their encouragement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have any other general public comment? Okay, thank you so much. Then we're going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is possible action for the approval of our minutes of March 17th, 2022. Do I have any corrections? If not, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor
I move
Jim?
to approve the meeting minutes of March 17. March 17, sorry.
That's okay.
My eyes got ahead of my mouth, as is often the case. Anyway, board meeting minutes of March 17th, 2022 as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the March 17th, 2022 meeting minutes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We're now on to some of our favorite things to do, which is our special presentation. So we're going to start with the proclamation recognizing April 2022 as National Donate a Life Month. Do we have someone here to? There we go. Hi. Hi, good morning. Good morning. Monica, come on up. All right. So, whereas more than 600 Nevadans and nearly 110,000 people in the U.S. are in need of an organ transplant, and whereas on average 133 people are added to the nation's organ transplant waiting list each day, one every 10 minutes. That's not good. Whereas one organ, eye, or tissue donor can heal more than 75 people. And whereas every person, regardless of gender, age, race, ethnicity, or economic status, has the power and the potential to transform a life through organ, eye, and tissue donation. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as National Donate Life Month in Carson City. I encourage all residents to join me in promoting organ and tissue donor education throughout National Donate Life Month. And you can go to your driver's license and go ahead and get it coded on there that you're a donor, so no one has to second guess it. Did that surprise you that I knew that? It's on my driver's license, so you can join me in that too. So, thank you so much. Do you have a few words?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board of Supervisors, for joining us in celebration of National Donate Life Month. And we see some of our partners here in this room, so we appreciate your support. On behalf of those people waiting, including nearly 600 Nevadans, we appreciate your support in bringing awareness to this important topic. As the mayor stated, anyone can register at the DMV or at our website, which is mvdonor.org, anytime or on your iPhone health app. So on behalf of those waiting, on behalf of our team, thank you for helping us to raise awareness. We appreciate your support so much. Thank you.
It's sad that someone else has to, it's not good news for a family, but you can live on. So it's a good way.
Yes,
So
thank
great.
you.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else who wants to join in? Sure. Kimberly and Sarah, do you want to join in?
Come on. You only get one chance.
Grudgingly.
I'm not a fan of photos, but that's okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Is it next for me to do longevity? Okay. Let's see. Is it longevity next or employee of the quarter?
Longevity first.
Okay. We're going to move on to, again, something we love to do is our longevity awards. That's why I can see so many people in here. So the first one we're going to start with is Marciela Sabalis. I'm probably not getting the last name right. Okay. Our public safety communications supervisor. That can't be right. 15 years?
It's actually 18, but that's, well, I
told you it wasn't right. Oh. Well, thank
you
you.
very
Oh,
much.
my
Thank you.
goodness. That is wonderful.
Thank you.
And the common answer is, and how many more years? A lot?
see.
A lot?
Well, they're watching, so.
Oh, I'm putting you really on the spot, but I like it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nope, stay up here because
Oh.
you don't get out of a picture
okay.
either. We kind of like pictures around here. Yeah, it's fine. And then the next one we have is Jeff Catlett, who's a street technician 3, right? Oh, like I said, see all that? Look at all this wonderful support. Thank you so much for all that you do for us. Hopefully we won't wash away today and make you.
I'm sure we won't.
Yeah, there you go. 15 years. And so you're at least 15 more.
Yeah. Hopefully.
I got a yes. I got a yes. Okay. And this one, I just find this really hard to believe because I've been here longer than she has, but what a great job. Our open space manager, Lindsay Boyer, 5 years. I just can't believe it. Thank you so much for all you do. She really works hard. I'm telling you, we have a team here in Carson City. The next one I have is Jesse Gutierrez. Yeah, Senior Juvenile Probation Officer, 5 years.
Just a few more, not 15, just a few more.
20, yeah, 20. I can't give it to you unless you say yes. No. Thank you so much for your good work. We really appreciate it. Okay, and we have another street tech. Cameron, I'm not even going to try it. Kazada? Oh, there you go. Okay, Cameron. I think I need practice beforehand on these so that I don't butcher a quesadilla. We'll go have one sometime. Thank you for your good work. I really appreciate it. Is that your nickname?
Yeah, for sure.
It is now.
It is now. You guys got it, right? You got it here, quesadilla. And this is another one that's just impossible for me to believe, but our fire chief, Sean Slayman, 5 years. I can't decide if they feel like yesterday,
Yes.
but 5 years. Really, thank you for all that you do for our community. Is this a team? I want a picture. Do you guys want to come? They can stand behind and get in the picture with us. everybody in, or you can come around either way. Oh. Thank you. He's a really a wonderful team. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Bottom of my heart. Thank you. Quesadilla it is. I'll see you on the street and it'll be stuck in my mind. Thank you. Okay, and our next presentation really is a proclamation where we celebrate once a quarter an employee that kind of exemplifies what the city's all about, or they just go above and beyond. And so for this quarter, and I was pleased to see that one of my notes actually made it in the file because I literally was stopped while I was eating breakfast for somebody to brag about this person. So it's really kind of nice to get that when I'm out and about, that someone tells me what great employees we have, and that happens often. So this quarter is Shadow Kelly, a water meter technician 2, as our employee of the quarter. So come on up. So whereas every day Carson City employees put to use their broad array of skills and expertise with efficiency and integrity for the benefit of everyone in our city. And whereas Carson City values its employees and acknowledges that recognizing employees for their hard work and dedication is critical to the future health and growth of our city. And we owe a substantial debt of gratitude to the Carson City employees and applaud those who go above and beyond in their loyalty and ability. Whereas Shadow Kelly, Water Meter Tech 2, has exceptional customer service, performing her duties with enthusiasm and compassion and putting the well-being of the citizens first, thereby contributing to the fulfillment of the city's mission and values and vision. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, celebrate the dedicated accomplishments of Shadow Kelly in serving the community and do hereby proclaim Shadow Kelly to be the employee of the quarter. Yahoo! Thank you so much. She really did. It was an elderly couple that had a water leak at their home, and she told them that it was really their responsibility. The water leak was on their side of the problem, but she helped them. She still recognized the water needed to be shut off and to really help these elderly people. So thank you. Woohoo! We get to look at that, and we give you a little money. That check cashes at any bank. Right? Yeah, just as it is. Again, thank you so very much. The best ones are when they come from the public. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you. All right, did I get them all done? Give that just a moment for them to congratulate me about. Okay, we're now going to move on to our consent agenda. Does anyone want an item pulled? Anyone had any issues? If not, I'll accept a motion, please.
I move to approve our consent agenda consisting of item 8A, 9A, 10A, and 11A as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, so we don't have anything on agenda item 12. We're going to move on now to agenda item 13A. Discussion and possible action regarding the potential disposal of our city-owned land at 2621 Northgate. Supervisor Giommi, a disclosure, please.
Thank you, Mayor. NRS 281A 420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I serve as a volunteer board member on RSVP and Advocates to End Domestic Violence, both of which are nonprofit organizations. RSVP is currently a tenant at Northgate property, and there's a possibility that Advocates to End Domestic Violence may have an interest in the Northgate property, being as they're a nonprofit. In my private commitment, I have a fiduciary duty to both organizations. Because the judgment of a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by my existing relationships with RSVP and Advocates to End Domestic Violence, I have a disqualifying conflict and will not be voting on this matter.
Thank you so much. Okay, who wants to start? Are you going to do it, Robert? Randy, who's? Go.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the board, for the record, Robert Nellis, real property manager. There's a couple items for your consideration this morning that we brought back from the April 7th board meeting with your comments that we've incorporated. The first item is the resolution that contains changes in Section 5 that states the minimum auction price. Section 6 includes the date of the auction now. Section 8 reflects the time and date when sealed bids with qualifications will be accepted. Section 11 addresses performance requirements for the first and second bidders now. And then the quitclaim deed, there's 3 alternatives for possible deed restrictions for the board to consider. The first alternative, just in short, requires all transfers of interest to be approved by the board except for standard lease renewals. The second alternative provides discretion to the nonprofit owner to approve certain leases except interest transferred that exceed the approved term would be considered void. So the board would have to choose a term for that alternative in this meeting. And then alternative 3 is essentially the same as alternative 2, except it's a little harsher in its restrictions where it would actually trigger a reversion of the property in that case. And with that, that's all I had. And I just want to express some thanks to the district attorney's office for all the extra hard work they put into this, especially Dan Yu and Adam Tolley on the quitclaim deed and resolution. Really appreciate all their work on this. And Adam's up here to help answer any questions you might have on the legal ramifications of the alternatives in the quitclaim deed. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So in general, Mr. Tully, would you walk us through the quitclaim deed, and do we need to really talk about the reversion options, and then do we have anything that we need to correct, work on?
Sure.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'll start with the last part first. There was I did notice something that I wish I'd noticed sooner, which is that the quitclaim deed and the resolution both use the same definition for qualified nonprofit. The problem with that, well, let's take a step back. Qualified nonprofits, one of the requirements is a 1-year service requirement, which raises the question, 1 year from when? For the resolution, the answer is 1 year from the date that the resolution is enacted, which works great for the resolution. Anyone coming to bid on it needs to have been here providing charitable services for a year. That definition doesn't work as well for the quitclaim deed because 50 years from now, the qualified nonprofit wants to transfer to a different qualified nonprofit. One of the requirements will be that the new nonprofit have provided charitable services in Carson City for at least 1 year before the resolution, right? So you're really limiting the pool of potential grantees to existing entities that exist today, which is probably not what we want. So it's an easy fix that I'd propose, which is just to have different definitions for qualified nonprofit, one for the resolution, one for the quitclaim deed, with the only difference being where that 1 year is calculated from. So for the quitclaim deed, I'd propose adding that as a defined term, and I'll just read what I'd propose. It's as used in this quitclaim deed, the term qualified nonprofit shall refer to an organization that A, is organized as a Nevada nonprofit corporation under NRS Chapter 82, B, is a tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and C, has provided charitable services in Carson City for at least 1 year preceding the date it receives any estate or interest in the property. So that's the definition that I'd propose adding to the quitclaim deed. And again, the only difference between the definition I'm proposing for the quitclaim deed and the definition in the resolution is that 1 year service obligation is triggered at different times. Resolution, from the date of resolution; for the quitclaim deed, from the date that that subsequent nonprofit would receive an interest in the property.
And then can you talk to us a little bit about the different alternatives?
Sure.
Because I want to try and,
So the alternatives here are, well, we'll start broad strokes. When we were here last, I asked for some more time to make sure that we could actually directly require pre-approval of transfers from, transfers to subsequent nonprofits, right? So whoever is the winning bidder wants to transfer it to another nonprofit in the future. The board was interested in seeing if you could somehow screen that. So I did go through the research with board counsel, and what we settled on is we're on solid ground there. If you want more detail, I can give it, but that's almost certainly something we can do. So the alternatives are really just 3 different ways of doing the same thing, which is pre-screening subsequent transfers. What's the same about all of them is permanent transfers of interest, so things like easements, sales, outright sales, always come to the board under all 3 alternatives. Under all 3 alternatives, any transfer that requires board pre-approval but does not receive board pre-approval is void. That's true for all 3. The main distinction between the 3 is just how active the board wants to be regarding non-permanent transfers. So things like leases, licenses, right? Things where you're transferring for a term other than forever. So for alternative number 1, the idea there is that really every transfer of interest in the property is coming to the board for approval. That's potentially a lot of stuff. And the balance that we struck there so that you're not getting annual leases for this property for pre-approval is that the initial lease on the property needs to come to the board. But subsequent leases, if it's just a pure renewal, nothing else is changing, then it does not come back to the board. It does not need to come back to the board. Alternative 2 strikes that balance a little differently. It gives the nonprofit discretion to enter into temporary transfers like leases, licenses, that have a term of X years or less, right? And you guys get to choose X years. So if you want to see anything that transfers an interest for 10 years or more, right, a 10-year lease, you can do that. And then 9 years or less, the nonprofit can police that on their own. It doesn't require board pre-approval. And again, X can be whatever. It can be 1 year, 2 years. It can be anything. I just would say probably don't go above 99 years because that the nonprofit can't actually have a lease with someone else for 99 years under existing Nevada law. And then alternative number 3 is essentially the same thing as alternative number 2. It's just a harsher penalty for not seeking pre-approval. Under alternatives 1 and 2, if you don't seek pre-approval, the transaction that should have gotten pre-approval is voided. Under alternative 3, the transaction is voided, but also the city's right to reversion is triggered. So it's just a harsher penalty for failing to get pre-approval.
Thank you. So just in general discussion, I'm thinking that alternative 2 fits what we were trying to give as much latitude as we could to have the nonprofit be able to function and lease to others and have the least amount of intrusion pursuant to the law for reversion. We're trying to give the most latitude. So I think alternative 2 is the one that creates that. I'm comfortable with, they can do everything that's I like 10 years, because I think that gives them the flexibility to do what they need to if they're gonna lease out or sublease portions or things of that nature. But I'm open for any discussion items here. And I think that will help them in their bank loans and everything else if they are able to do 10-year revenue generators with any of their lessees and things like that. So I'm okay with 10 years unless somebody sees something, has an opinion one way or the other, maybe not. Okay with that? That's a different world. We'll move to that differently. Okay, so what I want to do is we received some, did you get a copy of the information from Nevada State Bank that Ms. Buckingham provided?
I did not.
And it really deals with you can have this one. It really deals with the ability to get a loan concerning reversion and if the bank needs to foreclose. That's its, the essence of it is how do we get to write a bank mortgage against this and secure the bank's interest? And the one clause or one question that they had in there is a timing issue, which I kind of agree with the bank a little bit. So let's say the bank needs to recover or try to find another nonprofit to come in and take over. What is the amount of time, or is it executable solely by this board? Does that make sense what I'm saying? That we would be calling it like calling in the note for reversion. So let's say does that make sense what I'm getting to is they're no longer in business, therefore the qualification no longer exists and it would revert to the city. But does it require us to take the action? So could we allow the bank as much time as we want to try and recover? That's really the essence and of what I think the bank is asking. How much time do they get?
So I'd have to look at, give me one moment, I'll pull up the statute, but I believe the reversion is statutorily automatic. Yeah, so I'm looking at NRS 244.284 subpart 3. It says if a corporation for public benefit to which a property is conveyed pursuant to this section ceases to use the property for charitable or civic purposes, the property automatically reverts to the county. So it's automatic. I mean, whether we would enforce it on day one is a different question, but at that moment, our rights are vested.
I guess that's really what my question is, so I appreciate that. So while our rights would vest, it doesn't mean that we have to immediately re-record and we would take the property back. We could enter into an agreement or a discussion with the bank. So while we would have a right pursuant to the statute, doesn't mean we have, like you said, do we have to exercise it?
Yeah, we wouldn't necessarily need to exercise the right, but the underlying property right, it's The second it stops being used for a charitable purpose, legally, it's our property again.
And again, the sadness is this is statutory language. It's not what this board is wanting to implement. And I think there was some questions out from the public too, and I just want to go on to the record too, that some have been, why don't we just give it to them? Why don't we just do this? What you can see is there's a lot of laws around giving away the public's property. So I need to make that clear. This is the public's property. And so there are some strings of which, again, it doesn't mean anyone on this board loves some of those conditions. They're not ones we get to change. The law is put out there to govern what can and cannot be transferred and how it will be transferred. So I just put that out for general comment or discussion. Supervisor White, you had a question, comment?
Thank you. So if we trigger reversion, is the city on the hook for the balance of the note that might be in existence?
No, I can't see a way that the city would be on the hook. It's not a party to the contract, and its interest, its reversionary interest would precede the deed of trust. So I don't foresee a way that would happen.
Thank you.
So may I ask maybe just a question? Sorry, I didn't think of it in advance to get with you to research, but is the other alternative, let's say, can the city be the banker? Can we give a note to whoever buys it that they pay payments to us? And that way, everything is just affected by us.
I believe so. But there are specific requirements, but I believe so.
So would we, in the potential, that just makes some other sense to me, right? That it's not an income-producing property for the city at this point, but if we had somebody bid and offered that if they came up with so much percentage down or something, that we would carry the note and let them pay us the monthly payment. That's allowable by law. But so I think we should let this carry through and find out what's out there and see what can go on, because there may be other nonprofits that are even willing to fund this. And, we just don't know what's out there, but we can see if they can't be successful to get a note, then we can come back and see if there's a structure we would like to do, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Supervisor Jones?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the last resort would be the city carry the money. I don't see us getting into the real estate business. So that's my comment.
That's what I said. I think we should go out on this to start with and let's see what happens. Okay. I see that Joyce Buckingham is requested to speak specifically for public comment on this item.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. Board of Supervisors, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold I'm trying to shake. Joyce Buckingham, for the record, Ronwood Family Resource Center. I brought this indication from Nevada State Bank to you only this morning. I received it after close of business last night. When I received the proposed amendments to the resolution and the quit claim deed, I ran it by the legal department at Nevada State Bank. Angela Bradley, the vice president, is speaking on behalf of that legal department. The indication is, and Mayor, I think you touched on that, is that it's going to take 60 to 90 days to close. Normally, it's a fairly short time. She indicated for 70, but with respect to what the legal department weighed in, with respect to restrictions which the city intends to have run with the land, any lender needs comfort that the property will not automatically revert back to the city if the lender is working through foreclosure or resale of the property. If there are not bidders at the foreclosure sale, the bank would become the owner as the bidder on the property and would need a period of time to find a buyer. For these reasons, lenders need paragraph 1 in Exhibit C revised to accommodate a foreclosure and sale period for the lender, which will not be a nonprofit. Second paragraph is with respect to alternative number 1 in paragraph 2 of Exhibition C, a deed of trust could be determined by a transfer of an interest, and lenders would not be nonprofits. A transfer by a deed of trust or mortgage should be specifically excluded as a transfer in alternative 1. The property owner may need additional financing for property improvements and an increase in an existing deed of trust or a new deed of trust should not be subject to city approval. In addition, in the event that the lien holder pursues foreclosure and there are no bidders or obtains a deed in lieu, the alternative should allow the lien holder time to temporarily be the property owner to allow for an orderly liquidation of the property. Given the past history of the property, that could take a while, and the bank should be allowed to actively market the property and own the property without having the property automatically revert back to the city. The transference reference in Alternative 1, Paragraph 2 in Exhibition C should include language that the transfer is void unless pre-approved by the Board of Supervisors, which consent shall not be unreasonably delayed, or shall not be unreasonably delay the pre-approval. She goes on one more line, Alternative 2 and 3 in Paragraph 2 of Exhibition C also need to accommodate the possibility of the beneficiary on the deed of trust is a lender that is not a nonprofit. The alternative should also include language that the consent will not be unreasonably delayed for any pre-approval. Again, obviously, my concern and our concern is staying where we are. We love where we are. The other nonprofits, UNR Cooperative Extension, were vested in that property. We want to stay there. Doing my due diligence, trying to come up with what I can both afford to put down and also get on a lend from our bank. And I just need you folks to work with us. You know, if there is any reversion back to the city, unfortunately, it looks as though lending's going to be out of the question and going to have to look for other means. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Tully, was there anything inside of the Nevada State Bank letter that we can address to make it more palatable? Or we're really, no? It's okay. We can't do it. I get what the bank's position is. They don't want to make a loan on something that they cannot perfect the lien in the end, because that they're holding usually the actual property in their hands to recover their funds.
Yeah, if the board wants to provide more time for payment to be tendered beyond 70 days, we can. That's not, the board's discretion there isn't limited by statute. As to the other things, I'm pretty confident that the board's discretion is limited by statute, and if you wanted to help, I don't think that you could.
That's what I thought. What about when the bids themselves are coming in? Can they bid to alternatives like? We are willing to put so much down and pay the city so much or get a loan. Can we make it optional, or should we keep it clean? Just let's try the bid methodology with an outside lender, or?
I believe we removed from the resolution the the portion that says you've got to put X amount down. So really just, it doesn't, my understanding is that the resolution is now drafted that in such a way that where the money comes from doesn't matter.
Right. Okay. Okay, so then it's whether we want, do we think more time? Do we think we need to give more than 70 days? Okay, and then alternative 2 with 10 years? Everybody okay? 10 years and changing the 70 to 90 days? We good? Okay. Is there any other, just before, she was the only one that signed up, Miss Walt. I'm glad I asked, sorry. Miss Walt?
Molly Walt for the record. If you could, if the DA's office could clarify charitable services to the residents of Carson City. Is that direct services, or can it be a nonprofit that comes in and then buys the building? They're a nonprofit, but they may not provide direct services, but the organizations within that are current tenants do. I just need some clarification on charitable services.
Sure, yeah. So I'm not a court of last resort, so I can't tell you for sure what it means. That's what the Nevada Supreme Court would do. But I can tell you that the statute does say actual charitable services, which I think is probably best interpreted as something closer to direct services.
And that's something that has to stay because of statute? Or is it something that could be a little bit more open?
Well, they have to be organized pursuant to Chapter 82 and have a 501c3.
Correct.
Which means there's education, charitable, under the C3 components. So if you're concerned about a potential bidder, they're going to qualify under the charitable service. The direct service doesn't have to, I know that what you're concerned about is the type of charitable service, but it could be, it doesn't say it can't be animal services and everything else. That particular one, I think that you're concerned about is organized for charitable purposes.
Thank you for the
Just not in the
clarification.
sense that you're used to,
Thanks.
right? So I think it would be fine. He'll have to just produce his lovely certificate from the IRS. Any other? Okay, then Supervisor White, are you ready for a motion?
I am.
Okay.
I move to adopt resolution number 2022-R-9 with the inclusion of alternative 2, calling out 10 years as the term of leases to the quitclaim, adding the definition of nonprofit as explained by Mr. Tully, modifying page 3, paragraph C to 90 days, modifying page 3, paragraph D to 90 days.
And allowing the district attorney's office to conform any other change necessary to perfect that,
Yes.
in case you missed one. Thank you. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. And any abstentions? One abstention by Supervisor Giomi. Thank you. Well, we'll see where this goes. Thank you all so much. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item, let's see, 14A, which is discussion and possible action to give direction to staff concerning the Carson City fiscal year 2023 tentative budget, special revenue funds, enterprise funds, etc. Ms. Schutte, do you have a disclosure?
I do. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. This agenda item concerns direction to staff on the proposed Carson City fiscal year 2023 tentative budget, which includes the general fund, special revenue funds, enterprise funds, and all other budgeted funds in the city. My nephew, Chris Martinovich, is the city's transportation manager, and his salary is funded by the regional transportation fund and fleet. While I do have a familial relationship with Chris, this is a routine procedural matter for the broader purpose of taking action on the city's overall budget, and my nephew's salary is being considered along with other employee salaries in the aggregate. There is no discussion specific to Chris's individual salary, nor is there any discussion specifically related to the position of transportation manager. Additionally, Nevada's ethics law gives appropriate deference to the public policy of this state, which favors the right of a public official to perform the duties for which the public official was elected or appointed, and to vote because abstention disrupts the normal course of representative government. Since abstention is only required in clear cases where the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my situation would be materially affected, and I do not believe that to be the case because this agenda matter concerns broad policy considerations related to budgetary issues as a whole. I make this disclosure for full transparency, but will be voting.
Okay, well, that was long-winded, but the the answer is she'll be voting. So thank you so much. Okay, Sherry, Pam, take it away.
That might have been longer than my discussion.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. So, good morning. I'm Sherry Russell, the Chief Financial Officer for the record. First, I'll be presenting the tentative budget, which you all have a copy of. It was part of the packet, which is really our base budget. It's just flat out contractual increases. And then we'll talk about supplemental requests and then capital, as those will be additional and added to the final budget if approved today. And first, I want to take a moment to thank the finance staff. This is a lot of work putting this together. We start in January. So it's a very, very long process, and we all pitch in. So I really want to thank them. I want to thank the department heads because they and their staff all work really hard to get their capital and their supplementals into us timely. So it's really a team effort, this budget. This tentative budget before you is required to be filed with the state on April 15th, so it was filed timely. And we say that we budget conservatively every year, and basically that means we don't purposely inflate figures or purposely deflate them. We just round down kind of for revenue. We figure out what we think it should be, and then we take the lower number, and then for expenses, we don't incorporate termination savings. So we don't say, well, usually so many people quit, because that's a guess. And so we budget everybody staying in their position for whatever the term that we're budgeting. So there should be savings on the expense side. Revenue hopefully will come in a little higher. This is what we call conservative. So if we start with the first page of this is like all of our funds in one big mass pie chart. So all of the revenue, intergovernmental is always the largest. That is in our consolidated taxes, our sales taxes, motor vehicle fuel taxes, federal, state, and local government grants. So again, that's always the largest piece of the pie. The second largest is our charges for services, and that's broken out into three different pie sections there. The enterprise fund, which is water, sewer, or wastewater and stormwater. And then the internal service funds, and then the little piece for well, it's getting bigger, the landfill and the charges for services and governmental pieces. And then the third largest is our property taxes at 14.9, the gold section there. So that's, again, just a big pie chart of where our taxes come from and the largest pieces. The next one is, again, same thing for expenses. The largest piece there, is everybody is aware, is public safety. And then second is general government, which includes all the city hall, my office, city manager's office, IT, DA. It's all of the city functions. It also includes extraordinary maintenance and capital in that general government section too. And then utilities, the public works is the largest with utilities. All right. So if you like numbers and not charts, this is the numbers version of that. This is my favorite, the numbers version of that, which nobody else likes, but I like.
Me too.
It does show the 21 actual audited numbers and then what we expect it to be at 22, and then the current budget for 23, what's in the tentative budget, excuse me. So we're going to focus now in on the general fund. That's our normal operating fund, so that's where we have a little leeway. So as you can see here, C-Tax is also the largest piece of the pie there. That's our intergovernmental C-Taxes, so our sales taxes. And then property taxes is the second largest. Now, when I first came to you in February and talked about my projections, I was planning on increasing C-Tax for 22 by 2%, and then having the 1% increase for 23. And at that time, with 4 months of data, it looked like that was going to be a very safe, conservative estimate. But now with 7 months of data, the last 3 months have been very volatile. I do send out the C-Tax figures to all of you guys, and so we've seen some negatives. So I actually went down, and I'm just doing 0 increase for 22 and 23 to be conservative and safe. With the state of the economy, even the Russian war and the inflation, we just don't know what's going to happen, and I'd rather be safe than sorry. So to dig in a little more into the various types of revenues, just the two largest. First, we've got, well, actually, I first have a couple slides here, sorry, of the general fund revenues and historically. So this is, the gold part there is our C-Tax, and the darker green is our property taxes. As you can see, that makes up the vast majority of the revenues in the general fund. And then the next one is the property taxes. This is where I'm diving into property taxes. We lovingly call this our cigarette slide. I want to change the colors every year, but it cracks me up, so I can't. So our property tax rates, again, as I told you in February, we're not changing them. They're going to be at or as you approved, they're going to be at 3.57 per $1,000 of value. And if we increased it, it wouldn't bring in any revenue based on what assessed value is doing. So we did have a 5-cent increase there in 2018, and that was when we were trying to save money for the asset management program. So now we not only have the 5 cents that's dedicated to capital, but we have another 5 cents from the general fund that's dedicated based on that action in fiscal year 18. So there's no questions on that. We'll move to the comparative tax rates. Just to show we are one of the smallest tax rates. This slide changes so little from year to year. It's kind of funny. But Esmeralda County did actually increase a little bit this year. Last year it was like 3.019, and this year it's 3.044. And then there's no questions on that. The next one talks about our assessed value. It's kind of, it increased 15.4% assessed value, which because of the tax caps, we're only allowed to increase the actual bill by 3% for residential and 8% for commercial caps. Because of inflation and the consumer price index, we are able to go all the way to the 8% in commercial property. It's been 3 to 4% for the last couple of years because of the CPI index, but this year we're able to go all the way to 8. So as you can see there, the assessed value has kind of caught up with the revenue projected because the assessed value is so high. And that basically means we're going to have a larger abatement of taxes. So we have budgeted a 4.5% increase in property taxes, which should be very conservative considering that we have a lot of new property on the books to come on, and new property isn't capped. The property tax is what it is for new property. So we do expect it to be a little higher than 4.5%. That's really all I had for property taxes. If you have any questions on that. Next, I'm going to dive into C-tax, our sales tax, and this is our snapshot of our taxable sales over the last several years. So as you can see, the largest piece is that dark green. That's our motor vehicle fuel taxes. It's about 28% of our total taxable sales.
Parts.
I'm sorry, yes, vehicles and parts. Yeah. Not fuel, vehicle and parts, yes.
RTC would love you if you were right, but.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry.
That's right.
So it's 28.4 cents is what that number is. Typically, from year to year, it's pretty stable. But as you can see, it's just been increasing and increasing since basically 2010, I believe. And non-store retailers, I want to point out, it's a dark blue number there. Back in 2012, it was less than 1%, and today it's 5.3% of our taxable sales. So a lot more internet sales are happening these days. The next slide just shows what's happened with our sales taxes since the recession. 2006 was the highest figure in consolidated taxes prior to the recession. So as you can see, we're just climbing. This chart actually scares accountants because there's always a dip, and I keep expecting this dip to happen. So that's why we had a 19.4 increase in 21, and I've budgeted flat for 22 and 23. There's got to be a dip here soon. It's usually about every 10 years, so. All right, so general fund expenditures, largest by far is public safety. It includes fire, sheriff, juvenile detention, and probation. Oh, and alternative sentencing is also included. And then general government comes in second. General fund expenditures in the 23 budget are showing to increase slightly at 2.4%. It's basically due to merit increases for fiscal year 23. And this is a slide showing historically our general fund expenditures. As you can see, we are extremely consistent with how we spend our funding. The light green is the public safety, dark green is general government. And then the next slide is just how those expenses are broken out. We are a service organization, so 76.6% of our expenses are salaries and benefits. And those are contractually driven in the tentative agreement. So whatever the employee agreement or the bargaining agreement is what we've included in the tentative budget. This slide shows our employee count. We have risen slowly since the recession. So have our revenues and expenses, though. So with more resources comes more work. The general fund is still down by 42 employees. In 2007, there were 509 employees. Overall, citywide, though, there were 634 employees in 2007, and now we're at 654. This is primarily due to our grant-funded employees. Back in 2007, we only had 2 grant-funded employees, and now we have 46. So we are leveraging as much grant funding as possible. This slide just shows that we are actually budgeting for more revenue than expenditure, which we always want to do. The gap there is for capital improvements and increasing our fund balance, if possible. And then the first couple bullet points here are exactly what we just talked about with property taxes and consolidated taxes. Licenses and permits, we went up just by 1.1%, and charges for services go anywhere from 1% to 3%, depending on which charge for service. Landfill, I think we increased by 2% as that revenue just keeps keeps climbing.
Jerry, before you go on franchise fees, your estimated increase is just based off more customers, or is that what that
It's-
increase is?
It's more customers and possible increases in rates.
Okay.
So this is a snapshot of the general fund. Again, the actual from 21 audit, the estimated 22 through the end of this year, and then our tentative 2023. I also included the final 2023 in there. There were a few more supplementals that were added after our tentative was already complete. So the 5-year projection will be based off that final column. That is just in case you approve every supplemental that has been recommended. If you don't, then the final is going to change anyway. So I just wanted to give you a picture of what we're recommending for the next 5 years. I'm sorry, can you go back to that for a second? So in the tentative budget, there's 10.8% fund balance, and then it's closer to 10.5 in the final, which is what I was actually shooting for 10, so I'm pretty excited that it's 10 and a half. The general fund long-term analysis, this is the 5 years. We do this just to make sure whatever actions we take in fiscal year 23, when we carry them forward, that we'll still be able to afford everything as we move forward in time. And as I said, this is very conservative. There's no termination savings built in, and the revenues are very conservative. We have 0% C-tax increase for 2023, and then 2% for 24 on. Property taxes are 4.5% for each year, and then all the other revenues are 0 to 3% increases. As you can see, in this chart, I tried to build fund balance by 0.5% each year. That's in the goal of getting to that 16.7%. The last recession, I believe we had a 22% fund balance, and it was gone within 2 years. So if we're going to hit a recession sometime, we want to be prepared. In order to increase or decrease that ending fund balance, you would just increase or decrease the capital funding there at the bottom. You can see at the very last year, 2027, there is $5.4 million in CIP funding, which is really actually pretty good, considering that's a really conservative estimate. The supplemental requests, you'll see all the way across. That's because a lot of them are positions, which will carry forward in time. And then there's also a line item for firefighters and courts, and that's because of the new building we're building, the new fire station. We'll have to operate it, so we've got the operation budget in there, as well as what the courts budgeted for their extra time because of the action that was had. They have to work weekends now, basically. There's no questions on that. We'll move forward. I will go over just real quickly a couple of the other funds. Please stop me if you have any questions. This next fund is our capital projects funds. This is where we do our transfer from the general fund and fund a lot of the capital that you'll be looking at on the capital list in a few minutes. So we have that 13 million sitting for capital, but it's in board designated right now, so we won't put it there unless it's approved today. The next is the infrastructure fund. This is our sales tax infrastructure, and I'm bringing this up just because we are looking at potentially doing another bond issue in the spring of 2023 for the William Street project. We had always planned on doing 2 bonds in this fund, so I just wanted to let you know, we are doing good. We're paying our debt service. We have some capital outlay in there that will go towards the William Street project. If we did do another bond issue, that capital outlay would decrease in future years because it would be in the debt service section. So, okay, the next I'm going to go into special revenue funds really quickly. First is the quality of life fund. This fund is just near and dear to all of our hearts. It's Parks and Rec. And so 20% goes to maintenance, 40% to capital, and 40% to open space. Their capital has been included in this slide as to what they've requested. Again, it dependent upon this board's approval, But I did that so you could see the undesignated amounts in the slide and what they have remaining to spend, in case bids come in higher than expected or things happen. The Regional Transportation Fund, again, near and dear to all of our hearts, streets. This is the 9 cent per gallon that goes in here, and you'll see a very large number in 2023 for intergovernmentals, $13 million. That is the new RAISE grant that we received. Since we'll be starting work on the Williams Street probably spring or summer next year. That's when we budgeted for it. And then the Street Maintenance Fund. This is where our gas taxes go. The 5.35 cents in gas taxes, which are designated to maintenance. And this is just very little capital in this fund, only $480,000 in capital, and that's basically equipment replacement. The 2.5 million in salary and benefits, and then the rest goes to street repairs and maintenance. So, the debt service fund is the next one I want to talk about. I did work in the new debt for the fire station, emergency operations center, and backup dispatch center. That is included in this. However, the project will be performed in the Capital Project 210 fund. So this is just the debt service. All the funds contribute to the debt service in order to pay it. Next, I will go through the enterprise funds pretty quickly. The UFOC did approve and recommend approval of these budgets. We took it to them on April 4th. They're pretty minimal increases to salaries and supplies, mostly throughout all of the funds. It is promotions and that we're budgeting for, and merit increases. The capital plans we'll look at when we go through capital, and then you'll also see the bond refundings and proceeds that we got from the bonds that we just issued this year in 22 in the middle there at the bottom. And then on the next slide, this is our financial policies. It shows you that we're going to meet all of our financial policies, or we're budgeting to meet all of our financial policies. Just to go through one of them, the operating reserve, usually based on 30 to 45 days. I think water is 45 to 90 days. Just benchmarking other districts and their operating reserves. And then the capital reserve is the larger of the system reinvestment or the capital reserve. So you'll see we meet both those reserves. And then the debt to equity ratio, we want to make sure is 50-50 or larger. And so it's 37% debt to 63 ratio, so to 63, so that's good. And then debt service coverage, we always want at least 1% coverage so we can cover our debt. And that is 2.3 in the wastewater. So you'll see this little in each of the utility funds. So the water utility, this is, again, you see at the bottom those big bond proceeds and then the refunding. And we should all be aware of that. We had several meetings with the bonds, issuing the bonds. All right, and then we'll see, here's the financial policies for the water. Again, we meet all of our financial policies. Stormwater. Stormwater is looking fine. It's the smallest of the utility funds, and we did not have any bond issues or anything in 22 or 23, just the bond payments that are reflected there. And they're also meeting all of their financial policies. In the stormwater fund, there's not a lot of capital built into the budget. They have $1.5 million in ARPA spending next year that they're planning on using. So that's going to be in the 275, the grant fund. The last enterprise fund, that I want to talk about is the ambulance fund. This is near and dear to my heart because we don't supplement this fund anymore from the general fund. We used to when I started working here. It was to the tune of about $500,000. So it makes me just proud. This fund makes me proud, like my little kid grew up. But yeah, so it's doing really well from the Medicaid, the Nevada Medicaid plan. That contract goes through 2026. So that helps with some of our contractual allowances that we have to write off. And then there's only two internal service funds I want to bring up real quick, and those are the insurance and the workers' comp. And these, if they get, if we get a lot of claims, they can get out of control really quickly. So I wanted to point out that I have over $1 million in the insurance fund is what's expected. This fund, we will not find out what the pool's renewal rate is until June. So that could decrease once I find out what the renewal rate is. But so far, we're looking pretty healthy in this fund. The $1 million reserve is just based on what we have to pay in claims in our deductibles. And then workers' comp is the same. This one, we keep, I like to keep a $3 million reserve because our risk here, we are self-insured. So our excess coverage for police is $2 million. And then it's $750 for other employees. So we're self-insured. Otherwise, the fund is doing fairly good. Because of some legislation passed last year, the temporary total disability payments have increased. So unfortunately, our claims are increasing a little bit in this fund. So I'm going to have to watch it pretty closely. Rates may increase, but we did not have to increase them in '23 yet. That's really all I had for what's in the tentative budget. The next steps are to go through the supplementals and capital and kind of focus on the final budget now. And once I get the approvals from you today, we'll add those in and bring them back to the May 19th meeting, where you'll hopefully approve that budget, and then I can get it filed by June 1st, which has to be done by to the Department of Taxation. So in supplementals, we had approximately $5.3 million in supplementals. And IFC did whittle that down with the department heads, thank you, to about $3 million. That's before you today. That includes about $2.3 million in general fund and about $650,000 in other funds. Those numbers on this spreadsheet that I'm showing you here did change just a little bit. We had a correction on the third page, line item 121. It was noted that the reallocation of employees included the parks operation manager of 17%, which is also on line 127. So it was kind of duplicated.
You do, right?
Yeah.
You do.
Right down the side. Supplemental, not cap.
That's capital. We're not on capital yet. Sorry. So line 121 dropped to 103,363 in savings. And that's because it was duplicated, because that 127, the parks operation manager, was included twice. And I believe it was $19,000 was the difference. And then the other little error correction on here was at the very bottom, I give you a breakout of the total positions. And I miscounted. It's my fault. There should have been 2 more, so it's 25 positions. 17.2 in the general fund and 7.8 in the rest of the funds. So for the what we did last year, I kind of broke out what the board has previously reviewed, the board retreat discussions and NRS required changes, those mandated. Like I said, the courts are required to work the weekends now. So those items that are you've already seen are line items 16 through 18, 44, 49, 51 and 52, 54, 107, 113 to 115, 117, and 173. Do you need me to go through those again? Okay, sorry.
Well, actually, I'd like to set this up a little bit differently so
Okay.
that even the public can follow along with us.
Okay.
So what I'd like to do, in case there's anyone in the audience or that has any questions, I think it's just easier if we just stay on one page. And let's
Okay.
look at the first page, and then if anyone has any questions. So looking at the first page of the supplemental, is there something new or significant on that page that the board has not previously discussed? I don't think there's anything a surprise. Anybody on this board have any question on the first page? And I'm going to do this a little bit different. Is there anyone in the public that has any question on page 1 of the supplemental? Because I'd rather just move through these in an orderly fashion. Okay, I don't see any questions on page 1, so we'll move to page 2. Is there anything significant or of issue to anyone for discussion on page 2? Anyone in the public? Okay. Oh, you got one?
I did have a note on here.
Okay.
I wanted to ask about that cancer screening at the fire department that did not get funded.
Line number, Jan?
Sorry. It's line number 93.
On the physicals?
I don't know how to, yeah, I don't, let's see, on the, I'm trying to find it in
Page
the
115
supplemental.
in the backup?
Yep, 115. I just wanted to hear from the chief about that, if I could, and maybe just the reason that it didn't get funded. It seems like a small amount of money to me to participate in what I personally know is a real hazard that our firefighters face. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Good morning, Sean Slayman, Fire Chief, for the record. The item that we requested was going to be an optional cancer screen provided through our current occupational physicals. It would have been a voluntary process. What it is it's a
For the staff.
for the staff, yeah, not mandatory. It would not be part of their annual physical. It would be on-site once or twice a year where they would come to visit. They would do ultrasound screening on some critical areas where firefighters have a much greater increased risk of cancer. And so we wanted to start that process this year and move forward with that. We believe it would have been a long-term potential cost savings as the departments that are using it have caught cancer earlier in its development, and treatment is much less expensive. A lot of the cancers now are presumptive, or several cancers are presumptive under NRS, and so that would have been a potential hit to our workers' comp in the future.
Okay. I'd like to at least consider funding that.
Why did IFC not recommend it?
So IFC didn't recommend it because we felt that we pay quite a bit for group insurance and deductibles. So if they needed a cancer screening, we all felt like they could get it just like the rest of the employees. We understand it's a higher risk, but we had $5 million to whittle down, so we just could not fund everything. And this definitely sounded like more of an optional thing that did not need to be funded.
Let me ask the question too. So this would have been outside of the insurance that's required within their collective bargaining agreement. That's
Correct.
the other issue. So
It also would have been outside of, to be fair, the heart-lung bill too, which we're required to cover. It
Right.
is on top of that, yes.
Correct.
Right.
But it isn't a forever program. It's if I read it correctly, it's
I think it is a forever program.
If we add it, it's going to be a forever program.
I think it's a forever program. The objective is they'll charge us a fee per employee, and the objective, unless I misunderstood you, is they don't just screen, they would screen once a year because you're trying to catch something early. So is that how often does a individual, I guess that's the right question, right? How often does an individual do this?
An individual would get the test annually if they
Right.
chose to.
Right. Okay. Thank you. We can.
So essentially, we already pay for this through the insurance that's provided. Is that correct?
They can get a screening in their normal wellness or in their normal.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure they'd
Insurance
have to
benefit?
pay a copay or something, but yeah, it's mostly covered.
Most of that is not probably covered in network. You would be outside of that. It would be pretty, my experience is it would be fairly difficult to say, I'm a firefighter, I'm at higher risk of cancers, I'd like to get a ultrasound screening. But I don't know the actual ins and outs of.
And that was going to be my comment. I mean, to me, the difference between this and that is that this is a group who does heart-lung physicals that is aware of how to detect cancer screenings. And could it be done through the regular insurance? Probably, but I think it would be more difficult to do that because, as the chief said, you're not every provider knows exactly what cancers to screen for, whereas this particular organization does.
I think I need a little more I think I'm flying a little bit blind here on this one. I think I need a little more information on what is covered within the plan that we have and to determine whether or not this brings a benefit that outweighs what we're doing within the collective bargaining agreements and the health insurance plans that we have. So I'm not saying I'm opposed in general. If there's something we can do that's going to make early detection and all of those things better, but I think I'm going to need some more information. So that's where I stand on this one at this point, is I need to see the comparison from our existing health plans, what they can avail themselves of versus, if that makes sense. I just don't have enough to jump in and authorize this at this moment. Maybe a little more fully developed.
Yeah,
then
and
we
I
can
would say there
decide.
are going to be issues that further on that I suspect we're all going to want to either remove or add. So I would just like it considered.
Yeah,
That's my
that's
only
fine.
ask.
Okay, we put that out there. Okay, did anyone else have anything on page 2? Nothing? Nothing, I'm okay. Okay, we'll move on to, wait a minute, I want to put a circle on that. On page 3, does anybody have anything? Supervisor Jones?
Under the courts, there's 2 of the 3 positions authorized or recommended.
What line are you on?
I'm on 111, 112, 14, 15, 16.
Yeah, we didn't give them an additional bailiff. They got the other requests.
So isn't that position going to be used on the weekend also?
As far as I understand, they're only going to work 4 hours on the weekend and possibly not if there's no cases. So they do have some part-time people, and the judge is the one that said that this was not critical, that he would rather have the assistant court administrator than the marshal bailiff.
I understand that. Go ahead, Max.
Max Cortez, Court Administrator. Good morning, everyone. The marshal position that was requested was for the additional courts that are currently being conducted. The 48-hour hearings that we will be doing come this July, we are going to start those remotely through video conference. The only employees that will be at the court will be the clerks. They will be required to come into the court. So we will not have a marshal or a bailiff needed on the weekends or for the holidays. If the remote hearings go south and they're not workable, then we will have to open up the courthouse, and then we will probably need 2 individuals at security and 1 individual in the court for the safety of the public and the employees. So we were asked to prioritize our request because there was only so much money, and that was a priority that we gave to Internal Finance Committee. I do know that alternative sentencing is heavily relied on to provide coverage for the courts. And we are pulling from their responsibilities to be doing what their functions, because they are backfilling when our marshals and bailiffs go on vacation. But I do know, I believe that alternative sentencing also requested an additional officer. I didn't see the list, but I'm not sure if that position was recommended for approval.
They received one in alternative sentencing. Thank you. Okay, does anybody else have anything? Page 3, good. Anybody in the public? Okay, and then our final page 4, or the last page. Any member have one they want to bring up or question? Anybody in the audience? Did you have one, Lisa? Okay.
Regarding and I'm sorry I didn't submit this question earlier, the full-time construction inspector, or I'm sorry, 151. Reading.
Page 239 of the backup packet.
Right. So, here we go. Okay. So just some of the notes so in justification of request, during the previous peak of private development in 2007, this group was staffed with more than double today's staffing levels. Current workload is jeopardizing the quality of our inspections, response time. Construction management is severely overutilized, meaning there are more project hours required to work than there's work hours in the day. So can you go into more of why this position is needed, and if it's something that you're comfortable with it not being funded?
Good morning, Darren Schultz for the Record Public Works. Yes, I'd be happy to answer those questions and give a general overview. This is a division within Public Works that oversees the development side of engineering that comes in. They work, they're physically located in the brick building, but they fall under Public Works. This team is involved with the review, approval, and inspection of development work as we have it here in Carson City. As you know, the development has been up and down and all over the last 10 years and even beyond that. What's happened is that the development in Carson City has gone up. It has increased. We're doing more. We're reviewing more. And what we're trying to do here, this is a position that when a development gets approved and wants to perform the construction, this is a position that would actually inspect the parts of the project that are going to be owned by the city. So when the developer goes away and sells the building or the home or whatever, what's left behind, the portion of work that will be owned by the city. So these are pipes, these are sidewalks, these are streets, manholes, that sort of thing. So this position is involved in inspecting that and making sure that it's being built per plan, and per plan is per our standards, the city standards, so that the developer doesn't go away and then 2 years later there's a failure, and then we as the city have to pay the utility or the street to go and fix this failure. So what's happening is over time we're falling further and further behind, and so we started sitting down to try to discover exactly what our issue is, and it narrowed down to this position of inspector. That's the reason we need it. The reason, I don't want to speak for IFC, but what it was is that it should be funded out of developer fees, and there's not currently enough in that fund to fund an additional position. So what we're going to do is look at that fund and try to determine what's missing. Why is development not paying for development? Because that's what this is. I'll end there.
Thank you.
I would like to say that, I've never had a contractor or a homeowner looking for a permit and inspections tell me what a beautiful process you have. All I hear is complaints about how long it takes. So I think, looking at our master plan goal of customer service, I think we really need to consider whatever it takes to upgrade that part of what the city does. I mean, I saw a bumper sticker on a dump truck one time that said, make getting a building permit easier than getting welfare. We have to do something with this whole arrangement over at community development. So I would encourage everybody to find a way to get these kind of positions funded.
I can tell you, we are doing an internal audit right now of the building permits division, and we're looking at, how much we're paying Abbott to run that program, and if it's sufficient, if we should be running it ourselves, or if the outsourcing is working. So we are looking closely at that fund and potentially breaking out the fees to what we're doing in-house, so we don't pay Abbott any of those fees because we're doing those fees. And then what, Abbott does, then we would give them maybe a higher percentage of that fee that they're doing. But right now, they're just getting 60% across the board, and it just doesn't leave it hardly leaves anything for the operations in that fund. So, I mean, right now, without this supplemental, they only have about $100,000 after 23 is what's being budgeted. And we're in a boom. Right now, we should have millions in that fund, but we don't. So that's very concerning to us.
Well, and if I remember right, we have started some work on this. We added a fire inspector because that was a bottleneck that we had in there. So we did add a fire inspector, and I think as we really need a project that reviews the entire building fund. I mean, I think that's one that we can look at systemically, not just this, is the whole process. Where is it bottlenecking? Is it right? Is it, how do we, I've even thought of, can we even have, if somebody wants expedited service, right? Can they pay an upcharge? We don't currently have that in our structure to be able to say, I'd like my permit reviewed and issued within 5 days, and I'm going to pay to put on the staff person to concentrate to do that. We don't have that option. So I think that it'd be a good exercise, really with internal audit and stuff, to be looking at the building fund in its entirety and the processes.
That was going to be my comment. I mean, are we, my recollection is it's on the list to be reviewed.
It is. It's in right now.
by the-
reviewed
And is
right
it being,
now.
okay.
It's right now.
It's in
So-
the middle of the audit.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, instead of spending this money in this one spot, I say we wait for that review and find out if Abbott is the way to go, continuing or going forward, or we move it all back in-house. And then, because I agree with you, the whole idea behind Abbott when we went to it was the full-time staff, this is my recollection, when I worked for the city, the full-time staff in there didn't have enough to do because we weren't growing. Nothing was happening.
Yeah.
So we had staff who were literally not able to do anything relative to building or to their job. And so we thought at the time Abbott made sense because they could surge if there was a small surge and they could retract. But now that we're in a boom, I hope we haven't waited too long to take it back from Abbott. And, we take it back and we get into a recession and building stops and then we're back where we were. But yeah, we know when the audited numbers come back that we're likely to have more than we anticipate. And so maybe that's a time when we can look at using some of that to to make some of these changes if the study is done by then. When do you anticipate it being done?
They said they'd have the report ready by the June meeting.
Oh,
June
well,
internal
good.
audit meeting,
That's great.
so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I agree. Supervisor Jones, did you have a question?
I kind of agree with Maurice that I think the position is justified, and I would vote to go forward with it.
Yeah, I just don't think we should do it till we have the audit. I don't want to put the money in the wrong place. If it's better to do
Right.
X than Y, and I don't have a full picture just looking at a one-off.
If it's going to be
Discussion.
done by June, if it's going to be done by June, but
Yeah,
if it isn't,
as long as we get it by June, I think
Right.
we have
Okay.
time
Yeah.
to make a correction.
And I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be a single fix of just saying,
Right.
add this position. I think there's a lot more systemic issues. I think the other thing you have in the building arena going on right now is what I would call specialized activities, and we just don't have the staff. And so what I'm seeing is huge delays in helping create business environments in some of our areas because we don't have a staff expertise to even do the inspection. And it's not going to matter, frankly, this position isn't going to help in that. But I thought that's why we hired Charles Abbott too, because they would call in the expert that you need for this one-off building or this one-off activity. So I really do not think this is even going to be solved with just a single discussion. I think we're going to have to bring it back as a workshop for the board to really look at what's appropriate in the building department and then make the wisest decisions with the dollars that we can to effectuate better customer service or more customer service.
And the idea of Abbott being agile, being able to
That's-
expand and contract, bring in experts, that's very desirable. But the
Yes.
fact of the matter is, they're not getting the job done because nobody's happy.
Well, I don't know that no one's happy. I don't think that's necessarily a fair,
Nobody that's talking to me is happy.
well, that's, happy people usually don't call their board members. So, that's right. So,
Well,
again, I think we should defer this to a broader discussion of the building department itself and where we see it going, unless someone,
No, thank you for the conversation.
yeah, no, it's a great one. It's a great one. That's the whole purpose. Okay, I'll just take one last chance out there on any public comment on this before we, okay? So what we're down to on, and I will just say for the record, we will not be voting in this action on the individual items listed for Fund 602. That belongs in the redevelopment discussion to adjust those supplemental. So that again is just for the record. We had, to this supplemental list, we had the slight corrections on the record. And that's just mathematical corrections. It's not FTE or things of that nature. And then the other open item that was brought up on the record was the discussion on the extra physicals for the fire department. To my knowledge, that's what's outstanding for us to discuss. And again, for me, I need some more information on what's within our base plans. I need to understand this one more before I can authorize it for me to add in, but I'm not opposed to a later, fuller discussion if they can show us that how it would, why is it so much more specialized or better than what they can get in their standard insurance and those natures, because I think certainly Supervisor Giomi has a lot of experience in that area, but I need some more information. Insurance is already, what did we get, a 10% increase in insurance? I mean, it's not going in the right, well, insurance is never going to go in the right direction, but we did have a few years where we were holding pretty steady and pretty fortunate, but that's not the way we're going this year, 10%. So Supervisor Giomi.
Well, I will just say this. In my time in the fire department, we had a number of workers' comp claims. One was a fatality that we paid out, and quite frankly, are still paying to the widow of a deceased firefighter. And had that cancer been caught prior to his death, we wouldn't be paying thousands of dollars a month. I think this $20,000 is cheap insurance in my mind.
But it isn't mandatory for them to even do it.
No, it's not mandatory, but if it saves us down the line from having a firefighter die, which again under state law is presumptive, and paying that firefighter's widow or widower, because that's the compensation for the life of that surviving spouse, they get a lifetime monthly stipend, and it's a lot. It's not a small amount of money. It's probably on the order of this amount a month. So it isn't a small amount of money. Yes, it's voluntary. I get that, but you know, if you catch one person in the course of a 3 to 5 year period, you're going to save that money easily, in my opinion.
But they can't get it on their regular, I guess the confusion I'm having
They
is.
can get it
get
on their.
this anyway.
They can get it on their regular one if, provided you find a provider who knows what they're looking for and knows how to do the screening. This particular company is educated in completing firefighter and police officer physicals. That's all they do. They do them across the whole state of Nevada. They do them in Arizona. They have the contract with the state of Nevada to do law enforcement firefighters across the state. And they know what they're looking for. Could the fire department go out and find a provider in Carson, pull him or her in, educate him or her on how to do these and set it up so that that provider comes into the station and does them on behalf of the firefighters? Probably. I just don't know it would be as comprehensive as this exam from this company, who again, that's all they do. So they know what they're looking for.
So couldn't the firefighter go into this company though with his
And do it
insurance
himself.
card? Because
Presumably they
the
could. I don't
HSA
know if
account
they're.
would pay 100%.
Yeah, I don't know if they're, well, if
So
that's the
that's where I
case,
think that's the question.
yeah, if you think they can, then I would back off.
Okay, well, let's look into that because I think they can too.
Let's ask the chief. I don't know that they're in network. That might be the issue.
Sean Slayman, for the record, my understanding is it is not available under any kind of a regular, you can't go to ARC as an individual to do this. They basically bring the specialized equipment out to a fire station, and we would rotate everybody through either on or off duty during that time period. It is not something that I could go reach out to
So the issue
the
is they
company on
don't
my
always
own.
have it in their office.
They do
It
not. It's
goes
not in
around
an
the
office.
state.
It's a mobile facility, and it's scheduled in advance. And it's not something that if I'm on vacation that week that they're here that I could make up. So it's got to be planned around.
Okay, well, I've said my opinion. I understand what you're saying, Sherry. I mean, I get that. Knowing ARC, I don't know that they accept regular appointments anyway. I don't think you could make an appointment there and go in. So I'll leave it at that. I mean, it's up for the board to decide.
It's a hard decision. No, I'm thinking, my brain is trying to think of it at the same time. We're difficult to do. Why don't we do this? Let's just take, maybe I can't think because I need to use the ladies' room. So why don't we just take a recess till 10:30 and then we'll come back and do a final decision on the supplementals. Thanks.
No, it's voluntary on the part of the fire department. It's a flat amount per person. So depending on if the firefighter decides to go, who has that? No. Well, it's a workers' comp. So if they get cancer, they're free to get it on the job because firefighters deal with fire and a lot of, materials. So it's usually workers' comp. It's presumed to be related to the job.
Yeah, but wouldn't everybody want to find it sooner so they don't?
If you look out the window the last 3 years.
Well, yes, but the city also has very good insurance. So if they're worried, they could presumably go get a cancer screening from their physician. Yeah, he's really right, which I don't know that. I mean, maybe they are. Okay. Okay, 'cause I mean, as a woman, I know I'm taking like mammograms. I go in and say I need one, and yeah, and colonoscopies.
If you're symptomatic, if you're asymptomatic, you'll never get it approved.
Okay. 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 Yeah. Okay. Right. Right. You find it earlier. Yeah, you find it earlier. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we bought that one out so they have an annuity. So I don't know what it is. We don't write that check every month. But it's still a cost. Yeah.
But it's still a cost.
Yeah, it was a cost, yes.
Back to order. So what I'd like to do on this item is really separate it to the two issues, because, right? So we're going to deal with the first issue of the additional service for the firefighters. And so I just want to say I look at that in two different ways. Is their collective bargaining agreement is up next year anyway, and this may be a very viable option that we should be looking at. I think with a little more information, and I can understand the product and some of the information from the carrier, that, because I think this is set up a little different is what I'm hearing, where they come to the fire department. So I think I'd just like a little more information, and I could maybe support it during the process where we sit down with the firemen anyway and look at what's out there. And that's up this next year, anyway, for me. So I'm okay with waiting, and again, we'll have some funds, I think. I think Supervisor Giomi's right, and certainly some of this falls out through the process, and we may very well have the ability to do this at that time. I'm just not comfortable at this particular moment. So Supervisor Schutte?
Just a quick question on that. So, saying that this is voluntary, does that mean that if someone is off duty and they want to have access to this testing, that they would go on their own time and not be compensated?
I
Is
think
that
that's why we do some collective bargaining discussion and issues. We need a few more details, but you're on the right track.
Thank you.
Of what I think we would like to offer, I think. Okay. I see Supervisor Giomi.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to add to the supplemental request $20,500 or $650 for cancer screening to the fire department's budget.
I don't, I don't hear a second, so it would, I'll leave it open 1 second. So, that's not technically how it works, so, so it would die for a lack of a second. I do, again, want to state on the record, though, that I'm not opposed to this concept and what we're looking at, but I need the details about off-duty. We need just a few more details worked out, so I do want to encourage staff working with the fire department, and let's look at some of these issues, because I think Supervisor Giome's on to something here. I do.
And I'm comfortable that if we wait until June, which we've kind of talked around about, we haven't created a disaster.
Yeah, okay. So just on the record that we might be working towards this goal. Okay, then I'm willing to accept a motion to approve the supplementals as discussed on the 25 positions and the small correction to some of the math that Ms. Russell discussed on the record today. Can I have a motion? That is my motion. I have a motion and a second for approval of the supplementals with the technical math corrections discussed on the record. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, can I get who moved and who seconded?
The motion was Mayor Bagwell with a second by Supervisor Giome.
Thank you.
And thank you all. Does that, nope, we have capital. I was going to say, how come the room's not exiting? Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move on then. This clip is so big, I can't even get it out. Okay. All right, we're going to go on to agenda item 14B, discussion and possible action on our capital improvement budget. That is the material that was handed out this morning, just so that all the corrections, and this was posted as late material, correct?
Yes.
Just so everyone's on the right document. Okay, Ms. Russell.
Thank you. So for capital, there were several materials presented. There is the presentation that I'm going to go through really quickly. There's the 5-year capital plan, and then also attached, Public Works put together their prioritization and scoring sheet for fleet. So real quick, I'll go through the presentation. So most of our capital projects are done in the Capital Projects Fund. Next slide. And so this is the available funding and the recommended capital improvements. There's a list I'll go through for those. But for the available funding, we are recommending $10,274,451 from the general fund. That includes $2,686,000 for landfill. Also included is $50,000 in interest earnings. We do have some property taxes, 5 cents, that are posted to specifically for capital projects. That number is actually $764,000. However, we do pay a little bit of debt service out of here. So 401,912 is the net of the property taxes minus the debt service. And then because we were able to use some of the ARPA money that we received to pay for some of the HVAC projects, we've got some balance forward that we saved in fiscal '22, $1,795,000. So that gives us a total of $12,521,363. I keep a little bit in break fix just for unexpected things that happen during the year, and I will have some roll forward from fiscal '22 that'll add to that. Usually I like it to be a little higher, about $350,000, but with the roll forward, I think we'll be fine. So that leaves $12,1259,954 for capital. The list that we'll go through real quickly. There's the break fix I talked about, and then there's a little bit, or not a little bit, there's over $2 million for vehicle replacement program. And you'll see as we go through this, the vehicle replacement program includes the fleet as of today. If there are new vehicles requested, they will be separate on the list to add to the fleet. So that's really all there is here, unless you have any questions. There's a lot of facilities maintenance. This is for the asset management program that we're trying to catch up on. So if you have any questions here, I know Darren and Dan Stuckey are just waiting to answer all the questions.
I just do, and I should have asked before. I think, when we had the presentation, it's been plus a year, when we first had the facility condition report, we talked about trying to tie those two things together in the budget. So maybe next year we can put tie that together a little better with something on this report where it says, health services hot water tanks, and what the building condition number is, or something that just ties it together.
Okay, when we get to the 5-year plan, I think I've got documentation of what's included in the asset management plan that
Okay.
we're addressing.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, this is just the current year, but when we get to the 5-year, I think we'll go into that. Yeah. Okay, and let us know, we're gonna kind of skip through these. Let us know if you have any questions, and we can wait till the 5-year plan to ask questions too. These are just what's listed as paid for in the 210 fund, which is the capital projects fund. And then the landfill's always last. That's dedicated from their revenue from the general fund. All right. There's a list of fleet. This is, again, just the fleet replacement program. So these are the vehicles that were requested through fleet and are also included on that prioritization assessment to be replaced. Most of them have a lot of mileage, very old. And then the next slide, that's all the general fund ones. The next slide is all the special revenue and enterprise fund equipment that we're looking at replacing this year. Okay, the Carson City Transit Fund, this is paid for through the Federal Transportation Administration, so federal grant program. There is a match included in most of these. It depends on what we're buying. Sometimes we get a 20% match, sometimes it's 15, sometimes it's 50. But the general fund does transfer money to help with that match. And they're going to replace a couple of vehicles. They have some bus stop improvements, solar lighting. Pretty standard for the transit. Next one is the Regional Transportation Fund. And this is where that RISE grant, or RAISE grant, R-A-I-S-E, is included for the William Street Corridor project. And then there's a little bit of taxes also funding some of these projects. The Street Maintenance Fund. Yes.
On the pavement management plan, the district projects, does that include the funds that we transferred at our workshop? The 2 million?
No, that's going to be included in the 275 fund. That's going to be
Okay.
under ARPA.
Okay.
So that would be in addition to this. So the street maintenance fund is just a little bit of vehicle replacements. We try to focus on maintenance for this fund, so there's usually very little in capital. Quality of life fund. This, again, it's that 20-40-40 split between maintenance, capital, and open space. As you can see, they're trying to accommodate a lot of the parks equipment and repairs through the Quality of Life Fund. So they've got $1.3 million set aside in fiscal ‑23 for these projects. If you have any questions, that's all paid for with the 8-cent tax, or the quarter-cent, excuse me, Quality of Life tax. All right. Extraordinary Maintenance Fund. We are recommending a $2.6 million transfer from the general fund to extraordinary maintenance to pay for the projects here. These are also facilities maintenance projects. They just have to do with facilities and they're longer term, like HVAC systems that we expect to last, 15, 20 years, as opposed to the vehicles and the shorter term assets. The Residential Construction Fund. This is the fee that we get, $1,000 per house. It's been building in there. And they're looking at doing Blackwell Pond. the playground construction. This is very limited as to what they can do. It has to be a very small park. So, so Jen usually focuses on small parks each year to get some work done.
Is that new playground? Did Blackwell's already have playground? So this is rehabbing
have
it?
to- I
Okay,
think
this is a rehab, not new. Okay.
It's a replacement.
Yeah.
Which one's
You can come on the record, but Blackwell's near the Boys and Girls Club, right? The one across. Come and talk to us a little bit about this park. It's a pond. It's a park, but it's a pond, no? Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. So Blackwell's Pond is a park. It's a flood detention basin, has a wetland area, so that's probably what you're thinking as well. There's an existing playground that's over 25 years old, doesn't meet safety standards. We've already been designing this playground out of current budgets. This would be to construct the new one and tear down the old one.
So would that be similar to what we did on the other park, the one that we tore down, the
It'd be similar to
shade
like
structure
like
and-
Roscoe
the
Park.
Roscoe
That's
Park.
our goal
Okay.
is to try to tear down these old ones and try to spread that out over time. But it is an appropriate use of residential construction tax, and that park does qualify as a neighborhood park.
And where is this located?
It's on the east side of town, so it's over off at Northgate and.
Yeah, I remember. It's the one north of the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah,
In the
and-
detention pond off of North Ridge.
Yeah, Northridge, thank you. And, yeah, it's actually a really popular playground, so.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. Okay, the V&T infrastructure tax. This is primarily to pay the debt for V&T. However, we did an expenditure plan a few years ago and have moved this money to help pay for the district pavement projects. So there's $910,000 to help with the district pavement projects.
And how much longer do we have on that before that tax expires?
We paid this.
5 or 6 more years?
I
that's it?
usually make good notes on this. I think it's 5 years.
5 more years?
Yeah.
Something where we
Yeah,
can get
I
some
think it's
help for as
27 or
long as we
28.
can. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the infrastructure tax fund, this is our new sales tax, 1/8 cent. And so this one we talked about before that we're likely going to issue some extra debt for the William Street project. But the expenditure plan on this fund puts this money towards corridor projects. Yes, the corridor projects, yeah. Okay. The ambulance fund, now we're into the enterprise fund, so they theoretically should be able to support their own infrastructure. And again, I'm very proud that they are able to purchase ambulance and some other needed capital. And then we get into the utility funds. Again, stormwater has a little bit of equipment. The primary projects will be done under ARPA. It's about $1.5 million. And then the wastewater fund is next. So this is just through rates. And I didn't mention it before, but the Utility Finance Oversight Committee did view these and are recommending approval on these projects. And then the water fund is last. And same thing, they're just paid for through rates. The last little piece here is the fleet fund. They have a few little radio replacements and then a few vehicles. So with that, we'll go over to the 5-year plan. And I'm going to point out that this year I did do an item number in the second column on the left. There is an item number, so if we have a question or we're talking about an item, we know which one we're talking about. The original requests are kind of right in the middle, and then the recommended is right next to it, the fiscal year 23. And on the far right is the asset management program and which items are clearing some of those asset management program related items. And this is 5 years, so it's showing you over the next 5 years what we're planning on accomplishing. I'll also point out real quick that on page 3, towards the bottom of the facilities maintenance, there is that deferred maintenance number. And each year, we have a portion of asset management plan that we have to do, which is $4 or $5 million. So anything above that $4 or $5 million that we fund helps to dig into that deferred maintenance number. but each year the deferred maintenance number is going to increase a little bit because of inflation. So it doesn't look like we have made much headway at 19.2 million still sitting here, but over the 5 years, they are planning on digging into this as much as possible, trying to get this down.
Okay, I'd like to start the same way, so, that we did on the supplementals. So recognize if we're all looking at the same document, so we're looking at the 5-year plan. What we're discussing is column FY 2023. So that's the column we're gonna be discussing and voting on. So does anyone, sorry, these ones are not numbered, but let's just flip through them on the pages. So the first page, does any member of the board have any questions on anything in the FY 2023 column for discussion? Anyone from the public? Okay, we'll move on to the next page. Does any member of the board have a question on any of those items? Any member of the public? Okay, page 3, any questions? This is going way too easy. But for the public that might be listening, these are all things the board has been talking about and are part of our strategic plans and methodology. So there really isn't a lot of surprises to us because it's things we're aware of. So, but anybody, even in the public, any questions? Okay, page 4. Supervisor White, you have a question?
At Parks and Rec, down at, I guess it's Project 102,
Sod cutter?
the sod cutter. So we had the sod cutter on the budget for last year. Did we not buy one, or we need an additional one?
To defer to Jen on how many sod cutters we have, but I'm sure there's more than one.
Okay.
I see for the record, let's see, Dave Navarro, Parks Operations Superintendent, Madam Mayor, Board Supervisors, Supervisor White. We do have 2 like sod cutters. The one that was previous replaced one, and then this is this is for the next one.
Okay, because I didn't see on last year's 5-year that we had scheduled one for this year, so I was just wondering how many we have and what we're actually.
Yeah, and this one that we actually scheduled, it's if I recall correctly, it had some major mechanical issues throughout the year, so that's why it popped up this
Okay.
year as opposed to not being on 5-year.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other question? Okay, then the next page, any questions? Anybody in the public? Okay, we'll go on to 6. Mr. Lyon, did you have a question? Danny, French, sorry. Yeah.
Denny French, Carson City, Nevada. I'm sorry, I was trying to follow you and my sheets aren't, so I'm having trouble with that. But one of the observations I have is, I don't know where some of these parks are and I'll have a chance to look them up. But when you put in a pond, isn't there sort of a consideration of liability and observation, or
We're not
someone
putting a pond in.
taking a pond out?
No, we're doing a playground at a park named Blackwell's Pond.
Okay, but there's no pond involved.
Yeah, it's a detention basin.
Thank you. I
Okay, no
just
problem.
could not.
That's okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, anybody, any other question? Oops, I turned that off. I'm sorry. Seeing if I'm ready to go on my trip. No other questions on that one? Okay. We're on the last page now. Does anyone have a question? Supervisor White?
Down at line 195, I know we've discussed this before, but the reports that I've read, what I understand has gone on with that septic conversion program is, I don't believe we know today that this is a necessary project. Again, I don't believe if we let this project go, we're creating a disaster. It's $1 million, and we have a lot of very important things that in my mind rise above but this septic tank conversion program will benefit the residents of Carson City. And so I honestly, I cannot support the septic conversion program for $1 million until we know for certain that we are out of compliance.
Thank you. You have, okay, does anybody else have any questions? I'll take public comment one last time on this item.
Do you have something, Mayor?
Mr. French, okay, I'll come back to you. You already had public comment on this item, but do you have something else that you didn't?
I actually threw you back into the other items before. I'm sorry. This one was relating to the septic tank. When I first got into Carson, there was consideration about the septic issue as far as our water table and certain other considerations. Is that the same consideration that's been carried to this point?
This is part of a plan that we filed, and we had 10 phases to replace septic tanks and hookups in certain areas of
What
town. And this is the final
That's the final
stages of
stage?
conversion.
Okay, thank you,
and
because I
yeah.
know, I just didn't know
That's
where you.
okay. That's, like I said, I'm going to be honest with everybody. We've been having these discussions for months, so we're much more familiar. This one, oh, I don't even want to say it might be a 20-year discussion, but this one's been a long time, and
This project's been dormant for 10 years.
it's been a long-term project. So Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, I would just like to bring up, and I know we talked about it in our strategic planning session and other sessions, and I know Hope is probably not going to be happy with me, but I would like to accelerate our master plan. And I know that the revision of our master plan, and it's not budgeted in here, and I know Hope is talking about budgeting it next year and trying to push it through, but again, I don't know that I want to reallocate any of this, but my thought is, again, I'd just like to throw it out there for the board to think about now when we get our audited numbers. If we have some funding available, I'd like to start that process sooner rather than later if we end up with extra funds. So when we come back with our audited numbers, which is what, September, October-ish timeframe, November-ish.
When we do our first
February.
augmentation.
Yeah, when we do the augmentation. Usually it's a little
Right.
before that. But in any
Right.
case, I'd just like the board to maybe think about that so we can maybe start it sooner rather than later. I don't. I know not everyone believes that we need a full revision of our master plan. I don't know that I totally agree with that, but I'm willing to listen to that. But the biggest part of it for me is that it's been 20 years, give or take, since we've had really solid public involvement in input to our master plan. And it may be that it doesn't need a lot of changing, but this community's changed significantly in 20 years. And I think we need to afford our community members the opportunity to comment on that, on what our town looks like as we realistically probably plan to build out. That's kind of what we're looking at. And I think it's critical that we get that public input as we near the end of our maturation. The farther we push it out, to me, the less opportunity people are going to have to affect change if they want to affect change, not that they want to. So I'll step off my soapbox, but I wanted us to at least think about that. I don't want to push it to you right now because I know you probably have a lot to do and you got some things going on, but I wanted to throw it out there because I am going to ask for that if we have extra funds, and I suspect we will. Thank you.
No problem. I think during augmentation is a good time anyway. We look sometimes at accelerating or, well, hopefully, let's put it that way. I'm going to be optimistic with Supervisor Giomi that we're going to have a positive augmentation, not a de-augmentation, right? So I think we certainly could look at that during the augment time. Okay? I will allow this to be split by motion just so that it's up to you, Supervisor White. I like to offer the opportunity because I know you're interested in voting no on the septic conversion, so I don't want you to have to vote no on the entire project. So you may make a motion on the septic only if you would like.
Okay.
It's up to you. You don't have to make a motion. You can just let it stand as a comment, but I want to offer you that opportunity.
Let me get to the right page here. I move that,
Project 195?
yeah, I move that we do not fund Project 195 on page 967 of the agenda item 14B.
I'll second it for discussion.
On discussion?
I would like to add that I understand Supervisor White's position. Right now, I don't feel like I can support it. My biggest concern is not so much the legality of it, although I would like to, with you, hear about that. But my biggest concern is that we asked the feds for money for this very purpose, and they gave us those funds. And I'm worried how that looks if we turn around to them and say, just kidding, it's not really a priority. And so for that reason, I won't support it, but I wanted you to know the reason why.
Well, I appreciate that, but I think asking for the money was premature. And once again, send it back to them.
Okay. So I'm going to vote no on this because I will do everything in my power to protect our water. And I just believe that that's the issue for me. I'm going to protect the water, and that's that.
Well, and
I'm happy that the feds gave us some money so that I don't have to charge the ratepayers. Yesterday, we did the Quill Water Treatment Plant, to be able to increase our water. And it's just a mission for me to do everything in my power to have clean drinking water. And if there's septic conversions that we can do that helps those individuals that are on septic be able to have this at a much more affordable rate, instead of saying, oh, guess what? You have to convert and you owe $10,000, $20,000. I want to do it. And I'm happy to take the federal money to reduce that cost to our taxpayers. So I understand that it's just not there for you, but
I certainly agree with the idea of protecting our
water.
Drinking water in general, whether we're drinking it or not.
Yeah.
But I asked staff for every single document they have on this project. And never in any of those reports or those documents did the feds demand that we do this, nor did I read anything that says we're actually out of compliance. With the project being dormant for 10 years, perhaps it may not even be necessary, but the fact that we were not out of compliance 10 years ago, a lot of work has been done. We have some serious infrastructure issues to deal with. I don't see that we know this is a priority. If you can tell me, show me, document that it's a priority, I'll spend $2 million doing it. But I'm not going to spend $1 million if we don't know it's a priority.
Okay. I think staff put it in as a priority, so I'm not sure why they'd put it in if it wasn't, but we're going to move on. Is there any other comment? No? Supervisor Jones?
Well, I agree with what you just said, Mayor. I like it because it's offering the people that still need it a reduced cost, and down the road someday they're going to have to do it. There's no doubt in my mind.
Going to get more expensive.
And the other hand, we did accept the money. There was no caveat then. I don't think we have any choice. And are we about to the end? My one question, are we about to the end of this project?
It's the last phase, right? That's
Well,
my understanding. You can come up if you want, but let's see how well we can remember. There's 140-ish septic tank conversions left. Did I get that close?
You did.
Okay.
Darren Schultz for the record. It's been a project that's been going on approximately 25 years. We are now on to the very last phase of the project. As we typically do, we reserve the most difficult phase for the last because it's difficult to construct, therefore it's more expensive, so push that off as long as possible, which is what we've done. So if we were to complete this, then the total project of all 10 phases would be done.
So will the $1 million do the last of it? Do the remainder?
No, it won't. We're anticipating the last phase to cost somewhere between $4 million plus, maybe even, because it's difficult. So the $1 million is the city's contribution, and then we're going after grants for the remainder of it.
Thank you.
So can I ask,
Some out of the Fed funding too,
We did already,
Yeah.
yes, and we're asking for more.
right?
Darren, in 2026, you're asking for 1.5 million.
That is, yes, that's correct. So it'll be a total of 2.5 million out of local
So,
dollars.
so the 1 million in this fiscal year isn't the end.
That's correct.
The 2026 would be the end,
That's right.
assuming we don't get additional federal funding.
That's right. Now, the last phase, I just want to go on the record. It's not, it's much more complicated than the previous phases, and so we're looking at it differently. And there's a possibility that for 6 properties, we may treat on site and not actually build a pipe in front of their street because it's so expensive. We don't have those answers yet, but we're looking at it.
Yeah, well, and technology may change too.
That's correct.
In the next bit of time.
And
'cause it
Supervisor
always
White
is.
did bring that to our attention about, technology now there is some things you can do on site. So that's what we're looking at now. We don't have a project totally
Thank you.
ironed out.
Thank you so much. Okay, on the motion is to not fund Project 195, the septic conversion program. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. No. The motion failed. Thank you. I'll now accept a motion on the FY23 column on the capital projects requests as submitted in the late material document.
Second.
There you go. We have a motion by Mayor Bagwell and a second by Supervisor Giomi to approve the FY23 capital improvement program as submitted on the late material. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no.
No.
Well, then I didn't need to do 2 motions. Okay. Thank you. Motion carried. All right. We are going to recess as the Board of Supervisors and call to order. And may I have a roll call for the Redevelopment Authority, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Giomi. Member White,
Here.
Member Jones, Member Shooty. A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. Is there any general public comment on this, the Redevelopment Authority? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to agenda item 18, which is approval of the minutes of January 20th, 2022. Do I have any corrections or anything? Didn't see any. I'll accept a motion.
Move to approve the redevelopment authority meeting minutes for January 20, 2022 as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second for the approval of the January 20, 2022 meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item 19A, which is discussion and possible action on our redevelopment authority tentative budget, supplementals, and capital improvement. Again, for the record, there was late material for the 602 supplemental area requests. Sherry, you can take us through this.
Thank you, Mayor Bagwell. So good afternoon, I'm Sherry Russell, Chief Financial Officer for the record. And I'm going to be presenting a brief overview of the redevelopment tentative budget that has been submitted on April 15th. And then the supplementals and capital. So the highlights for the 2023 redevelopment budget, their assessed valuation actually increased 23.5%. The property caps are the same though, 3% and 8% on commercial property. So we stuck with our 4.5% increase in property taxes expected for fiscal year 23. That is primarily how redevelopment is funded. As far as expenses, personnel costs increased 23%, which seems very significant. However, in fiscal year 22, we budgeted $149,780 because Lee and Hope, and we had some higher salaries in that time. However, Lee retired, and so our re-estimated budget with all the position changes is only $120,000. So that's why there's such a significant increase is we had a lot of salary savings in fiscal year 22. So the budgeted 23 looks a lot higher, but it's really not. Services and supplies actually decreased a little bit, and that's because of one-time funding for the downtown entry sign and park signs. And if unspent, those services and supplies would roll forward into 23 as well. We do have $1.5 million of capital projects that we'll get to in just a moment. This is, again, the numbers, if the verbal wasn't enough. It does show the audited numbers for 21 and then the rest of this year's expected expenditures and the 23 proposed budget. The next slide breaks them out by district. We usually give this to you once a year just to show you that we are tracking the 2 districts and what we spend in each district. So these are the revenues broken out and the expenses. And then the next slide finishes up with the rest of the expenses, fund balance, and then the breakout of the services and supplies. So right in the middle there, you see total revenue less expenses. This year, it looks like the South Carson Street is being supplemented a little bit by the downtown district. There were a lot of projects going on in the downtown district a few years ago when we did the big downtown project, and now we're finishing up some projects from the South Carson Street corridor project. So this flip-flops here and there. We do a little more in downtown one year and a little more in South Carson, but we do watch it to make sure we're not spending too much in one district over time.
You know, just for the record, I had done coffee and conversation at the chamber, and there is a general question concerning the potential to expand because there's some businesses that are on the perimeter of some of our districts right now that are a little bit interested in being able to be a part of the facade program. A little bit off of Winnie Lane area. So that's just, again, just right next door to a district. And so we really had a discussion on that. And so one of the things just to be looking up, if my memory serves me right, we like to only do work directly in a district, but by law, we can declare that it benefits the district. And so I would just ask staff to do a little bit of research in that to see if there's some of the little side streets or things that are adjacent, that was the proper word I was looking for, that they might also be able to avail themselves of the facade program. So I just want to kind of put that out on the record because we certainly want the side streets coming into those potentially maybe to be able to improve the exteriors of their buildings also. So I just want to put that on the record. Supervisor Schutte attended that with me. But Supervisor Jones?
Well, have we ever considered making another district for the north part of town?
You know, part of the issue with creating a new district is it removes taxation from our general fund and from the school district. And so it's a pretty tough nut to consider doing another district and removing, it's not more tax. I think that's the other misnomer to people, that these businesses are paying more taxes in and then we're putting it back into them, because that's not the truth. They pay the same exact tax as everyone else. What it really does is it takes the tax away from everyone else and makes us concentrated in the area. So
Well, doesn't it only take away the incremental increase?
Yes.
It doesn't take away the base tax.
not the base, but
So-
all the tax increases over the
Correct, the
30-year
increases.
life.
So really, we're only losing potential future money. We're not losing current money if you put something into a district.
Redirecting it.
We're
Well,
just
yes,
redirecting.
I'm saying losing
Right.
it from the general fund.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you look at this, let me say it that way. So in 1 year, that means I'm redirecting $3 million of tax that would have gone into our general fund in the school.
About $1 million
Yes,
of
it's-
that goes to the school, right?
Yeah, they're about a third of it.
It's
Give or
3
take.
million now, but
Right.
it wasn't 3 million when.
Right, it
the district was, of
incrementally
course.
is correct.
So the amount that you're redirecting in the early years of a new redevelopment district is not that great. I mean,
Takes years
Sherry
to build
could-
up.
Yeah, I mean, Sherry could pretty easily calculate that.
Don't say that to her.
Well,
She's like, no,
she
no,
totally
no, no,
can.
no.
Yeah, I'll work on that.
No, but that's part of the discussion points about they're wonderful to be able to do something in your blighted areas. And my memory will take me way back because I did it when I worked for NACO. But it really started with North Las Vegas that had some horrific blighted areas of their community and they just had no way to address it. So you started on this incremental growth financing and stuff, and it's been a good tool for us.
Well,
but-
I would just throw out, I wouldn't necessarily, I don't know that I'm ready to jump on board with Supervisor Jones right now, but I wouldn't mind putting this on the agenda for our next workshop and at least having a discussion about it, because we're going to be eventually improving the north corridor, and I think it's worth a discussion. I think it's worth a discussion.
And I don't have a problem having a discussion. I'm just not interested in having three. But these two will be ending in 34,
29 and
36,
32,
something. So it could be when we're taking one off that then would replace that tax back in, that maybe we consider a new area. It's not a bad discussion. Not a bad discussion. Okay, keep going.
Okay. And then the next slide is the 5-year projection. So this is split into 2 slides again. So the revenues on this first slide, property taxes increases by 4.5%. And then you'll see beginning fund balance. There is always 200,000. So we use everything we think we're going to get in the same year. And so the next slide shows how we use that. There's a big undesignated line. So if we haven't designated that money yet, then the redevelopment authority has a little wiggle room for projects in the future. The capital is in peach on this slide. That is the capital plan for the next 5 years. If you'd like to discuss that now, this is a pretty good place to discuss it.
I don't have anything on those. Does anyone have anything? No? Does any member of the public have anything in that?
I mean, do we have enough in the North Carson Street in 26? Is that, I mean, are we hitting about the design phase there? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah.
Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. So, yeah, the 100,025 for North Carson Street is for the design phase.
And the 500?
500 for North
The
Carson.
500 is for the construction. If you'll remember, there's only a couple blocks of the North Carson Street project that are part of the redevelopment district. So we're somewhat limited on asking for more, and that's the
Well, we
reason.
are, but based on what the mayor just said
That's
about
right.
adjacent parcels being, well, now we're causing Hope consternation. So anyway, I mean, I just,
Hope Sullivan, Community Development Director, just very briefly. Everything you're seeing in this presentation for capital projects was thoroughly reviewed by RAC. RAC did express concern about funding North Carson Street, given the limitation of that corridor relative to the redevelopment area. And proportionality, in terms of proportionality, the Public Works Director the Public Works Department did verify that we were looking at proportionality, and it was based on that RAC was supportive of the request.
okay. I just guess I would emphasize what the mayor said
We're gonna
in
look at it.
terms of looking at the legality and that, and potentially, RAC could be reapproached with new information.
Right.
Anyway,
So,
thank you.
no, I want to agree with that, and since it's out in the outlier years, we can direct, and I know that I had a DA's opinion. I served on RAC for years, but I'm pretty sure this board could ratify that it is of beneficial use to the redevelopment area. And potentially, but we can get to that in the next year or two, because as you look at our undesignated amount, we could make some updates in the fiscal year 26 when we're going to be on the North Carson. We have $900,000 sitting there, so we may wish to to look at doing more infrastructure projects out of that. So I think that's a good discussion item, but we don't have to make Dan's crew do it tomorrow. The next day would be okay. Yeah, there you go. So thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Can we go back to the previous slide for a moment? I'm sorry, Pam. I wanted to point out that I did add in the Michael Hull incentive payment, which starts in '24. And all the incentives are in there as well. Yes.
Why was that starting, remind me why that's starting later? I mean,
So,
was there a
they-
second one? Is that?
Paid off the
No.
note.
Yeah, they have two notes with the city, the first one, and then they got a second one later.
Okay,
And this is when they are expected to pay off those notes with the 50% of their sales tax.
gotcha.
So
So
once
that
they-
triggers the repayment.
Right, so once they
component.
pay off that note, then we have to pay them an incentive.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
For how long? How many years are left?
Whole,
If you
whole goes to 2042.
To what year?
2042.
So we're gonna need some DA help on that too, because that extends beyond the life.
Yeah,
Not sure
yeah.
how we managed to do that.
I think, yeah.
By
we're
we,
gonna
you
have
mean
to
the
work
previous
with the
board?
DA.
Not this
No,
group.
No, it's not this.
I'm
board.
like, what? Because I remember
Yeah, I
looking
think
at that
that's the
going, how
only
can you give
one.
an incentive beyond the period of time that the,
That was done before my time, but it was, that's the only one
what'd we
that's
do? A
beyond
30-year,
beyond the
30-year
RDA.
contract or something with them? Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll have to look at that problem too.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so in this budget, the next step is, of course, bringing this back to the May 19th meeting and then filing it on June. And if you have any questions on the supplementals that were presented as late material, I guess we can talk about that next real quick.
Yeah, this information that was in the supplemental, that fits what we talked about at the retreat to do the arts and culture. And so this fulfills all of the discussion items we had during the retreat, which is why we have a supplemental, which we rarely have in
We do.
redevelopment, but this fits everything that we voted on and had that, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Is there any
And I
other?
apologize, the reason I put it in with the supplementals is the positions were split all over the place, and I thought it was confusing enough having it in one document, so.
It works. Does anybody have any other?
I have a couple.
Supervisor White?
So I know for some time now, we've been discussing that we want to spread this money around and not pigeonhole it into one particular area. So if we look at the expenditures down towards the bottom of that first page where it says downtown equipment and infrastructure, I know there's a dollar amount over there for District 2, but why are we designating that as downtown when I don't know that we've ever voted on it or not, but we want to spread this around to all of the areas within the redevelopment that are not downtown.
I think it's just because it's called downtown.
Yeah, I can remove the word downtown. It looks
Well,
like
that's
it is.
the name of the
it is-
district. That's what we've always called it, even though it isn't only downtown.
Right, but that's the.
Two is,
Right, but that,
not
I see what
downtown.
he's saying, the equipment and infrastructure line item is split between downtown and Carson.
Yeah, it
It's
splits
just
across the
called
two districts.
downtown, so I
Right.
can take out the downtown. and
It's just
call
a
it
label.
equipment and
Right.
infrastructure.
It's just a
Yeah.
label, right?
go on to the next page at facade improvements. I know I've raised this question before, but I truly believe we have more important things to do than fixing up private property. I know we talk a lot about blight. The condition of private property, that's the responsibility of the private property owners. I'd really like to see this money for the facade improvements moved over to sidewalk and ADA improvements. I think that is a substantially more important thing that we need to be doing.
Supervisor Jones?
Well, going along with that, have we identified sidewalk improvements for the next year? Like last year, we did Stewart Street. What's the next project we're looking at?
We're gonna do Stewart Street.
This year, right? Yeah.
This year and next year.
Both,
yeah.
yeah.
A little bit this year and a whole
Right.
bunch next
A
year.
whole bunch next year, right.
Yeah, Dan Stuckey, Deputy Public Works Director for the record. So yes, the Stewart Muster kind of intersection and then a couple other areas, those are already in the works and design, and the plan is to do that, bid that out soon.
Right.
For next year, we're working on, we're going to try to scale this project much bigger because we're going to try to bring in those FTA funds this will serve as the local match. So we're looking at possibly like $1 million type sidewalk improvement project. We haven't quite mapped out exactly where that's going to go yet. But we're in the process of identifying those areas and packaging up one larger project to fully leverage our local dollars.
I think I agree with Maurice. I think facades, I think we've done a lot for downtown, and I would prefer we spend it on sidewalks or somewhere else. That's my personal opinion.
I think I feel like I'm in a little bit of a pickle because I had some of those individuals coming to ask if they could obtain the facade on the adjacent properties.
Well, I'll tell you what we've done in the past, and I guess I would be okay doing this. Maybe it's the best of both worlds. If this facade money isn't always spent.
Right.
There have been years when it hasn't been spent.
Right.
So let's leave it in the facade program, which I think is important because it changes the look of our community. I don't think anyone can argue that the look of downtown changed dramatically. The look of South Carson has changed dramatically thanks to the improvements we've done and the compliments that we've gotten from people. Let's leave it in the facade program, but designate it so that if it isn't used in a given year, the following year, we designate it to roll into sidewalk improvement. Maybe that's a compromise that we can live with.
I think, well, what you're saying is it wouldn't become 100,000 the next year. We don't do that in this fund anyway, unless it's obligated. And
Right.
so since we wouldn't have an obligation, we would just leave it at the 50. It wouldn't become 100.
Right. We have never just rolled it over.
Right.
We've always set it at 50,000.
Right.
So if the 50,000 isn't used, and my recollection is last year it wasn't used at all. Was it? Do you recall? I don't think it was used at all last year.
I don't think it was.
Right.
So
So then it just drops into
That's the case.
undesignated.
We drop it into
Right.
undesignated, or
Right.
if we want to, if the vote is now to say instead of dropping it in undesignated, we'll just declare right now that it'll drop into sidewalks. So that next year sidewalks would be 250 if no one uses it. And, if the next year's doesn't work, it would be 250 again. But if someone does use it, then it's there for that improvement that I still think benefits the community. But if not, then we're declaring that it's important enough to do sidewalk improvements to do that. One other quick comment, Dan, just whenever we do sidewalk improvements as part of whenever we do a project, are we tending to do sidewalk improvements at the same time? So my example is Colorado Street. We're not going to do Colorado Street and not do the sidewalks, right? You don't need to get it. You can just nod your head and I'll say yes.
Yes.
Yes. So in general, we're catching my point is we're catching sidewalk improvements
All
pretty
the
much
time.
everywhere we can in any way we can. It's not just this money that's doing sidewalk improvements.
That's correct.
So I don't want people to think that we're ignoring sidewalk improvements because we're doing them in a lot of ways. To me, this small amount of $50,000 to improve a facade that to me beautifies our community. We just talked about North Carson Street. Some of you even talked about beautifying North Carson Street. Anyway,
As another.
yeah.
So for now, we're talking about fiscal year '23. We can talk about the philosophies for budgeting for the future, but for now, our motion simply will be on the fiscal 2023
Right.
CIP supplemental and tentative budget, just
So-
to clarify for the record.
Just moving on from that, then, if we look at the farmer's market, we did talk about not only reducing, but in the end, result of this support money to the nonprofits is more or less ending up being seed money. So I'm wondering, why are we pushing this farmer's market out through the 5-year?
That's what we agreed to do during the meeting, is we would give them a 5-year
Okay.
phase out. Remember, that's what we agreed
Missed-
to
Okay,
at
I
the
missed that
retreat.
part.
Yeah.
Okay. 4th of July fireworks. On tab 97 in the big binder, it shows 0 on the fireworks. So do we have a malfunction there,
No,
or?
It's in services and supplies, because
Okay.
we're actually buying fireworks. It's not really a donation to a entity.
Okay,
Good question.
I think that's
Okay.
all I have.
All right. Are we ready for a motion? Supervisor Giomi.
I move to approve the Carson City Redevelopment Authority operating and capital budgets as presented,
Including the supplemental.
including the supplemental.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion and a second for the approval of the redevelopment budget and the capital budget and the supplemental presented. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Thank you very much, and please thank your staff for all of their hard work. It's a million little numbers, and to try and get them all into the right spots and the right lines is a task. So I
It
appreciate
is,
the
and
long hours and effort.
I really want to thank you guys. This is not easy material to go through, and I realize it was thousands of pages, and I really appreciate all your hard work going through this as well. Thank you.
200 million little numbers.
200 million, there you go. There you go. That was good. That was good, Maurice. That was good. Okay, so we're on to final public comment in the redevelopment authority. Do I have any? Come on up, Denny.
Mayor, supervisors, in regards to the Stewart Street, and I know y'all voted, so I can't go there, but I do want to really try to impress on you how darn dusty that place gets. And that dust comes over Stewart, goes on to the church there, goes on to the Taco Bell, goes on to the Main Street area and the banks there. And if you're not going to do something with it, build something, put cement on it or something, plant something, keep that soil down or that sand or dust out of the air. Because when it gets blowing, it really gets going. And so the other thing that I'd like to suggest is that, and this is a off the subject of budget, but it is part of my concerns. I think the park names and their structured identifications should only hold the city of Carson City's plaque on it, a state plaque, and the name of the park. I think it's wonderful people are donating and making contributions to different things, but I don't think those should be the set onto those plaque sets. They sort of look like gravestones, but the deal is that they're for the park specifically, and that any people that want to donate then should have a special place, a very special place to show how important they are to us as donators, but have it not on the specific sign, a special place for such, so that if in chance everybody falls out of good graces, you don't have to tear your park sign apart. You can take it off of a unit that is separate from, but given the appreciation and a good set of positioning, but not on specific park signs. So that's my take on that, and that suggestion about the dust issue. And I really appreciate the considerations towards getting the water safety, and I appreciate your consideration on that. My first year here, went on a trip that talked about the fact that water was being interfered with through septics. No matter how they did it, it could not be a problem. So it's 10 years or 20 years. I'm glad it's in the works, and I know we have different feelings on that, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. With that, I don't see any other public comment. Okay, we're going to adjourn as the redevelopment authority and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. Is everyone okay with pushing forward? We're good? Okay, then we're going to go on to agenda item 23A, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed resolution for our 2023 assessment roll for the Downtown Neighborhood Improvement District. Ms. Sullivan?
I want to introduce Garrett Lapierre. In the case of the Downtown Neighborhood Improvement District, we have a Downtown Neighborhood Improvement District Board of Directors. And Garrett is the chairman of the Board of Directors. So they manage their money, although the city serves as sort of their bank. And they pay their invoices, they hire their contractor, they prepare their budgets. Before I turn it over to him, the only comment I'll make to the Board of Supervisors is they have suggested keeping the assessment exactly as it was this fiscal year for next fiscal year. And so the documents that have been prepared reflect that. Having said that, Garrett and I have recently been a little bit back and forth, and we have some meetings coming up to kind of better define the scope of work that the NID's doing, and will involve Public Works and Parks and Rec in those conversations. But right now, with keeping the assessment flat, the NID will have sufficient funds to execute on their duties. And with that, I'll turn it over to Garrett.
Thanks, Hope. For the record, Garrett Lapierre, here talking today as president of the NID. We submitted a proposed budget for the next year. Inflation has pushed up our contract price for the maintenance downtown. And then we also have some goals to help with some art projects in the downtown area as well, specifically the Mercury Cleaners Building, trying to make that look a little bit better with that being open for so long. Put something there that is going to be visually appealing, at least on the Curry Street side. Other than that, I'd take questions from you guys if you have them.
Supervisor Jones? Microphone, thank you.
First of all, I want to congratulate you, Garrett. Your crew has done a great job, and downtown does look good. And the plants have all survived, and pass that on. They've done a great job. But expand a little bit on what you're talking about, the Mercury Cleaners. What are you talking about?
So they're going to be tearing that building down and doing EPA remediation, and there'll be a pump in there. So what we're looking at is having a temporary wall and have a mural on that wall, is the discussions that we've been having, that faces Curry Street. You'll still be able to see from the side if you're coming down, if you're coming south on Curry and looking in, you'll still have a visual there on that back side of the building. So it'll be the backside where like Piazza, the salon, and all that is right there. But on the Curry Street side, the discussions we've had is having a temporary wall built and then be able to put art on that.
And that sounds like RAC money, right?
Can I just add that
That's CTA.
It's CTA.
CTA with the arts and culture money.
Yeah, as I had reported at a previous board meeting, follow-up from CTA, that they're working with the Garrett and his team and the contractors. And the idea, hopefully, is that this art that goes there is sort of the first step in future art panels that may go around the downtown.
Correct.
And one of the things that we're kind of thinking about is maybe we end up having an art walk in addition to the Kit Carson Trail at some point in the future, with panels that might depict art and would guide people through the downtown or through the historic district.
A continuation of murals, yeah.
Correct, a continuation of the mural project, yeah. And you didn't have to take your Giants jacket off. You should have just kept it on, actually.
And Madam
They're
Mayor,
losing, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I know.
at the risk of belaboring this, I just want to frame Mercury Cleaners. Mercury Cleaners needed to get a special use permit because they were going to demolish the building and not comply with the downtown development standards. So they had a condition of approval that they were to, it was anticipated they would put up chain link fencing and a banner, and the banner was to contain art and historical information, no commercial speech. So that, given the city's investment on Curry Street, we wouldn't look at an eyesore for 3 years. That's the frame of it. Having said that, I reached out to both Garrett and Deborah, and because NDEP is not in the art business, they're in the clean water business. And they said, we don't know how to do this. And so thank you to Garrett and to Deborah, who immediately said, that's exactly the type of projects we want, we'll get involved. And so it wasn't necessarily within NID's scope of work, but without hesitation, they both stepped up and took over. So really appreciate
And
that.
I'll just add, it is exactly in line with the kind of stuff we talk about in our art and cultural strategic plan. It means exactly in line with that, where you have something that isn't normally an art-related event, but you have an opportunity to improve it by using art.
Absolutely. Supervisor White?
Thank you. All this activity that's going on there at the Mercury Cleaners is creating substantial interest. Looky-loos want to know what's going on there. So maybe to try to help avoid people wandering down that alley onto private property to see what's going in there, this mural, this wall that you construct, maybe you can put some portals in there so people can see what's going on there. I've been in other construction areas, specifically in New York City, where every once in a while there's a hole in the wall, so you could stop and look at what's going on in there. It keeps, in that particular case, it kept people from standing around in the street trying to peek over the fence. So maybe consider that as
I like that suggestion.
help alleviate maybe somebody stumbling around in the dark in that alley trying to see what's going on.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions? Is there any public comment on this item? Great, I will accept a motion. We're on item 23A. Supervisor Jones?
I move to adopt Resolution 2022-R-10.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2022-R10. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Garrett, and please pass on our thank you to your whole committee. You bet. Thank you. No. Okay. Go Giants. Oh. Okay, we're on to agenda item 23B, which is discussion and possible action on our resolution, this time for the South Carson NID Improvement District. Ms. Sullivan?
I'll just point out that the difference between the downtown NID and the South Carson NID is the South Carson NID is actually managed by our Public Works Department. And so Dan Stuckey was instrumental in helping identify the budget and what the necessary assessments will be. With that, I'll stop. If there's detailed questions about the budget and the assessments, I defer to Public Works on that. Thank you.
See no questions up here. Any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll accept a motion. Supervisor White? I have a motion and a second for the approval of resolution number 2022-R11. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Again, thanks for the good work. I should have asked, who does a better job estimating and bidding, Public Works or? Yeah, we're gonna have a contest and watch this over the year, right? I don't know if anyone's engineer estimates are working these days. Everything's costing so much more. Ugh. Okay, we're going to move on then to agenda item 24A, which is discussion and possible action regarding an amendment to contract 20300294 for Loomis and Associates. Does any member have a question on this contract? Nope. Is there any public comment on this contract? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the contract amendment as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the contract amendment. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we are now on to, I think, let me double check, yes, on to our non-action items. City Manager, do you have anything to report?
Nothing for today.
We got to fix that. That's way too easy. Okay. Any member of the board? Supervisor Giomi? I'll come to her in a second. Go ahead.
First, I was
No,
not.
that's all right.
I just wanted to mention a couple of things. One, and Lisa, chime in here if you think of anything I'm not thinking of. We had our Carson Water Subconservancy District Board meeting last night. We did a strategic planning session for 3.5 hours or so. And over the next month or so, we'll be coming out with, I guess, sort of a high, medium, and low priority system. And once we get that in place, I'll share that with the board. But I don't think there's anything substantial that came from that meeting that we would report about, unless I'm missing something. CTA meeting was last week. And Arts and, Visit Carson City has produced a 2022 Arts and Cultural Events Calendar. I put some on the back counter, but I'm going to pass some around, and I have a box here, but it's a handy calendar that lists events through the whole year. And I think it's a really cool document, and the plan is to do that annually. So
Very
I think
nice.
this is the first version of that. And I think it's useful to take it around to businesses and hotels, and of course it's all on the website. So there you go. That's what I have. That's the plan for that. I personally didn't, but my hope is that that's what they were doing. But I did not do it myself.
Okay. Deputy Manager Hicks, do you have something to share with us?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to announce to the board that the V&T Railway Commission has launched their 2022 operating schedule. So that is online. Tickets are available for sale for all scheduled train rides except for special events and Polar Express, which will be posted in the future.
Great news. Supervisor Schutte?
In light of conversations about nonprofits, April 30th is the Cassie Bark Wine and Dine at Casino Fandango. Cassie, which stands for Carson Animal Services Initiative, works really hard to help pet owners who otherwise can't afford the service to spay and neuter their pets. So through the Critter Fixer program, Cassie also assists in emergency medical needs if there is a terrible event and a pet owner doesn't have the funding to even take their pet to the vet initially. So doing a lot of great work. So April 30th, if anyone wants to buy tickets, there are a few still available.
Thank you. Supervisor Giomi?
Yes, sir. When Stephanie was talking, I just recalled something. What is the status of the grant that we applied for expanding broadband in Lakeview and
We don't have
Timberline?
the answer yet,
I haven't.
right?
Have we gotten an answer yet, or?
No. Oh, we just did?
Actually, we did not get funded. They ended up only funding, gosh, I want to say 7 or I don't know. It was a really small amount.
Really?
And only one, I believe Elko was the only place in Nevada that got funding.
That's a bummer. Thanks for the great
It
news.
is. Yeah, that'll teach you to ask. Sorry. Okay. Supervisor White? Darn. Well, we'll have to use our million.
Speaking of nonprofits, the Nevada State Prison Preservation Society has released their tickets for the first 2 months of the summer tour season. If you'd like to get tickets, you better hurry. They've been available for 4 days now, and they are 62% gone with only Facebook postings. So those tickets will be released in 2-month sections. It'll really help with the paperwork and refunds and all of that sort of thing. So
Can you tell if those are out of state or out of area ticket sales?
not yet. So it's the monthly report that comes in from Ticket Taylor that will give us that information.
Okay.
But we do know from conversations that we've had with folks interested, we've had 2 very large bulk purchases locally. One at 10 and the other, I think it was 18 people.
I'm really interested to see if that becomes a tourist draw, you know, to be able to find out, you know, whether that becomes a heads in beds and whether all that starts coming together.
That is the idea, of course, since clear back in 2012 when the legislature created this and allowed the Nevada State Prison Preservation Society to be the caretaker of the facility. We are in conversations with David over at Arts and Culture.
I'm interested.
We're also in conversations with the State Museum to put in our museum on loan different artifacts related to the prison. We're not triggering anything with Visit Carson City yet until we really have our process nailed down. Because we really don't want that malfunction of a tour bus showing up and
There's nobody there to let them in? Oh,
yeah, so
there you go.
we have to build that volunteer base. We really have a good relationship with Silver State Industries to bring in all the little trinkets and stuff to put in our gift shop, T-shirts, hats, all of that sort of stuff. Really big is the paranormal investigations. You can't believe
Yes, I
the
can.
enthusiasm with that. We've actually, it was supposed to happen in April, but had to postpone till June. We have a group coming from Ireland to do a paranormal investigation at the prison there. The live action role play games should be back this year. We will have a meeting with Department of Corrections the 26th of this month to nail down some of their concerns from the last time we had people running around in camouflage, shooting at one another and throwing grenades at each other.
Right.
So a little modification there.
Wonderful.
That was an awesome game. People came from all over the country for that. This outfit we've contracted with, furthest away we had was one guy came from Connecticut, two guys came from I think it was Alabama, came out to
Yeah, I really
play.
think we
This
have
is
an
really
opportunity
the
to,
opportunity there,
about that.
and again, not that prison will be the crown jewel, but a lot of people, including Visit Carson City, feel like that's a final piece in the puzzle to make Carson City a truly tourist designation. Because you could spend
A stopping point.
Yes.
Of its own, yeah.
all on its own.
I've always thought that, I always thought that a wedding venue I think it's yes.
Yes.
Because I think there are a lot of people who would take advantage of the ability to say, hey, I got married in a prison.
So it is amazing.
With Johnny
during
Cash
our
singing.
period,
Yeah.
during our period after 2015, when we thought we were open and things went sideways, we had about a 3-year period there where we turned down about a dozen requests to be married in the prison because we couldn't do any functions. So we haven't had any yet last summer or this year.
And the mayor can marry people,
Right.
just so
What's
you
that?
know. And the mayor can marry people.
Oh.
So
we're
we could
ordained?
really have a lot of fun. No, I'm just,
Yeah.
statutorily, I can do that,
there-
so it's
really-
fun. Okay, that's great ideas.
Yeah. There's really no limit to what can happen out there. The event center idea, we've already had one concert out there with Lacey J. Dalton.
Yeah,
It's,
I was there too.
there's no limit to what this facility can provide. Arts and culture, the tourist thing, I'm really excited that we're at that point now to make this thing happen. And by the way, we need a president and a treasurer. So
It's a lot of work. And thank you for your efforts on that.
I guess I'm doing all three, the president, the treasurer, and the
Well, that's
vice president.
dangerous. No. Okay, thank you. I just want to, again, give a shout out and thank this board for coming to the Lone Mountain Cemetery, the tribute to the Civil War veterans. Just want to let you know, I think we raised about $20,000 for the improvements at that cemetery. So we did get enough funds to build the new signage that will be consistent that we did with all the other parks and areas that we have. So I'm looking forward to some of the final touches that have to go on. The young Eagle Scout has collected his money to do his bench.
Some of it.
No, he finished last night.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Because I haven't heard back from him.
Oh, well, I gave him, I don't know, someone witnessed me paying over some cash to him that we collected in some donations. I'm like, I need a witness. But I think he might be down, what did he say? He's waiting on one bid for some bolts or something. So there may be just a teensy bit left to secure it. But
he jumped right in the middle of a whole group of politicians having a conversation, and he walked away with some promises, but I haven't heard back from him
okay,
beyond his initial email.
okay, great. So
if you
it's
talk to
super
him,
exciting.
Tell him
You're ready.
there's more money over here.
He might do it. He said he was waiting on the bolts, I think, or something. But other than that, he had the bench part handled and the cement handled, but maybe not the fixtures. So super exciting. We got some great press in the paper. It was, I don't know. I thought it was really wonderful for this community as a whole to come together from all the different Rotary, the board, general public donations. Bill Miles Construction will be working this summer on the coving stuff. He's going to get some sandstone from the quarry and be able to put it back to its original status. So I think it was just wonderful to have a community project come together, and certainly the high school's ROTC program with the flag raising and all that. Just a delightful event that Sunday, and just want to thank all of you for your tree donations, and we'll watch that flourish over time. So with that, I don't see anyone else with any general comment under item 25. We don't have a closed meeting today, so we will go to agenda item 26, which is our final public comment. Do we have any? Okay. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all so very much for a good meeting.